They say drowning is peaceful, that after the initial panic, your body surrenders to the cold embrace of water and darkness. They lied. I didn't surrender when Marcus Steele, the man I'd loved since childhood, wrapped his hands around my throat and held me under the icy lake water. I didn't find peace when my lungs screamed for air, when my vision blurred, when the world above the surface became nothing but distorted shadows and muffled sounds. What I found was rage. Pure, crystalline, burning rage that kept my heart beating even when it should have stopped. Rage that made me claw at his wrists, fight against the inevitable, refuse to let him have the satisfaction of watching me die quietly. Marcus wanted me dead because I was defective. 24 years old, and I'd never shifted. In our world, that made me worthless. It made me a liability to the Crimson Veil Pack, a stain on his future as Alpha. So he chose her instead, Natasha Vex, my cousin, the perfect she-wolf with the perfect bloodline and the perfect ability to give him perfect heirs. And when I threatened to expose the truth about why I couldn't shift, about the secret his father had been keeping for 2 decades, Marcus made his choice. He pushed me into Serpent's lake during the storm, held me under, and watched the bubbles stop rising. But Marcus Steele made one critical mistake. He didn't stay long enough to make sure I was actually dead. Because something found me in those dark waters. Something ancient and terrifying pulled me from the depths and breathed fire back into my frozen lungs. When I opened my eyes on that muddy shore, I wasn't looking into the face of death. I was looking into eyes the color of molten gold, eyes that belonged to the most dangerous wolf in the Northern Territories. Darius Nightborn, the Rogue King, the wolf who'd been exiled from civilization 50 years ago for crimes so brutal they were still whispered about in terrified tones. And he smiled at me like he'd just found the weapon he'd been searching for. "Well, little drowned rat," he said, his voice like gravel and smoke, "it seems we both have scores to settle. So let me make you an offer you'll be too angry to refuse." That's when I learned the truth. I wasn't defective. I was dangerous. So dangerous that Marcus's father had been poisoning me since childhood to keep my wolf buried, because if I ever shifted, I would be stronger than any alpha in the territory. And Darius Nightborn was going to help me become exactly what they feared most. This is the story of how I drowned, and how I rose from those dark waters as something far worse than Marcus Steele's victim. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever wanted to rise from the ashes and show them exactly what they lost, then you need to hear what happens next. Because Valentina Cross is about to rewrite every rule in the shifter world, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of her transformation. This story has 10 chapters of betrayal, power, romance, and revenge. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Drowning. The annual Harvest Moon celebration should have been the happiest night of my life. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my childhood bedroom, adjusting the silver dress Marcus had sent over that morning. It fit perfectly, hugging curves I'd always been self-conscious about, making my dark auburn hair look like fire in the candlelight. The note that came with it had been simple. "Wear this tonight. We need to talk." My wolf should have been preening with excitement. Should have been. The problem was I didn't have a wolf. 24 years old, and I'd never experienced my first shift. In Crimson Veil Pack, that made me an anomaly. A genetic dead end. The whispers followed me everywhere. Defective, broken, human-born in a wolf's body. My parents had died when I was 6, leaving me in the care of the pack. Alpha Rowan Steele had taken me in out of obligation to my father, who'd been his beta. But even his kindness couldn't erase the fact that I was fundamentally flawed in a world that valued strength above all else. Everyone except Marcus had written me off. Marcus Steele, the alpha son, had been my best friend since childhood. We'd grown up together, trained together, dreamed together. And somewhere along the way, friendship had become something deeper. At least for me. Tonight, I was certain he was going to make it official. Tonight, at the Harvest Moon celebration in front of the entire pack, Marcus was going to claim me as his mate. The thought made my heart race and my palms sweat. I didn't care that I couldn't shift. Marcus loved me anyway. He'd told me so 1,000 times in the quiet moments we'd stolen together. He'd promised that when he became alpha, he'd change the old laws, make room for wolves like me. I'd believed every word. A knock on my door pulled me from my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting my cousin Natasha. She'd promised to help me with my hair. The door opened, but it wasn't Natasha. Marcus stood in the doorway, and my breath caught. He looked devastating in his formal black suit, his dark hair swept back, his gray eyes intense. He should have been downstairs greeting pack members, playing the role of future alpha. Instead, he was here. "Marcus." I breathed, a smile spreading across my face. "You're early." "I'm not quite ready." "We need to talk, Val." His voice was flat, emotionless. Nothing like the warm tone I was used to. My smile faltered. "Okay, what's wrong?" He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, not meeting my eyes. That's when I noticed the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. This wasn't the Marcus I knew. "My father is dying," he said abruptly. The words hit me like a physical blow.
"What? When?"
"How?" "Lung cancer. The healers give him 3 months, maybe less." Marcus's voice was clinical, detached. "Which means I'll be taking over as alpha by the new year." "I'm so sorry." I moved toward him, reaching out to touch his arm, but he stepped back, away from me. The rejection stung, but I tried to understand. He was grieving, processing. Of course he'd be distant. "The pack needs stability," Marcus continued, still not looking at me. "They need an alpha who can lead them into the future. And they need a Luna who can stand beside that alpha. Someone strong. Someone powerful. Someone who can produce heirs that will carry on the steel bloodline." Ice began to form in my stomach. "Marcus, what are you saying?" Finally, he looked at me, and the coldness in his gray eyes made me want to run. "I'm saying you're not that person, Valentina." The room tilted. I grabbed the dresser to steady myself. You don't mean that." "I do." He said it so simply, like he was commenting on the weather. "You're wolfless, Val. You'll never shift. You can't give me the strong pups the pack needs. You're a liability I can't afford anymore." "But you said..." My voice broke. "You promised you loved me. You said it didn't matter, that I couldn't shift. You said..." I lied. The words were brutal, final. "I kept you close because my father asked me to. Because your father saved his life once, and he felt obligated to make sure you were cared for. But that obligation ends when I become alpha." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "So what? Are you just going to throw me away? After everything we've been through with each other?" "There was never any we, Valentina." Marcus's lip curled with something that looked like disgust. "Did you really think I could love someone like you? Someone so fundamentally broken?" Each word was a knife to the chest, but I forced myself to stand straighter. "If you're breaking things off, fine. But you didn't have to come here and humiliate me. You could have just..." "I'm not just breaking things off." Marcus cut me off. "I'm announcing my engagement tonight. To Natasha." The world stopped spinning. Natasha. My cousin. The only family I had left. "No," I whispered. "She wouldn't. We're family."
"She knows how I feel about you."
"She wouldn't. She's known for months," Marcus said, and there was something cruel in his smile now. "We've been together for months, actually. She's everything you're not, Val. Strong, beautiful, capable. Her wolf is one of the most powerful in the pack. And she's already pregnant with my heir."
The room swam.
I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Couldn't process the magnitude of this betrayal. "You bastard," I managed, my voice shaking with rage and pain. "You absolute bastard. Does she know what you are? Does she know about the treaty violations? About the embezzlement? About all the dirty secrets you've been keeping?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Careful, Val." "Why?" I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to my own ears. "What are you going to do?"
"You've already destroyed me."
"But I'm not going to let you destroy this pack. I'm going to tell everyone what you've been doing. I'm going to..." His hand shot out, grabbing my throat. Not squeezing yet, just holding. A warning. You're not going to do anything, he said softly, dangerously. Because if you open your mouth, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll make sure the entire pack knows every humiliating detail of how you threw yourself at me for years while I endured your pathetic attempts at seduction. I'll paint you as an obsessed, delusional girl who couldn't accept reality. Let go of me. My voice was steady despite the fear creeping up my spine. Not until you understand something. Marcus leaned closer, his breath hot against my face. You have two choices. You can leave Crimson Vale tonight, quietly, and I'll give you enough money to start over somewhere far away. Or you can stay and fight me, and I'll make your life so miserable you'll wish you'd never been born. I'll take option 3, I said, meeting his eyes with all the defiance I could muster. I'll expose you for the corrupt, lying piece of. He shoved me backward. Hard. I stumbled, my heel catching on the carpet, and crashed into the dresser. Pain exploded in my ribs. You stupid bitch, Marcus snarled. And suddenly, he was the predator, and I was prey. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I am going to be alpha.
My word is law.
And if I say you're a threat to pack stability, no one will question it when you disappear. Terror flooded through me as I realized what he was saying. What he was threatening. You wouldn't, I whispered. Marcus, please. I won't say anything. I'll leave tonight. Just please. It's too late for that. His eyes had gone cold, flat. The eyes of someone who'd already made their decision. You know too much, and I can't risk you growing a conscience somewhere down the line. He grabbed my arm and hauled me to my feet. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but his hand clamped over my mouth. The Harvest Moon celebration will be remembered for tragedy tonight, Marcus said conversationally as he dragged me toward the window. Poor Valentina Cross, so distraught over her wolfless condition, so despondent about never finding a mate, decided to take a walk by Serpent's Lake to clear her head. She got too close to the edge. The autumn rains have made the bank slippery. She fell in. He opened the window, and I could see the lake in the distance, dark and forbidding under the full moon. They'll find her body in a few days, he continued. Tragic accident. The whole pack will mourn. And I'll give a beautiful eulogy about how I tried to help you, but some wolves just can't be saved. I bit down on his hand, hard enough to draw blood. He cursed and loosened his grip just enough for me to scream. Help. Someone help them. His fist connected with my temple, and the world went dark for a moment. When I came to, we were outside, moving through the woods toward the lake. I could hear music and laughter from the pack house in the distance. The celebration had started. No one was coming to save me. Please, I sobbed, all pride abandoned in the face of imminent death. Please, Marcus. I'm begging you. I won't tell anyone. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. Please. I know I won't, he agreed. We reached the lake. The water was black and choppy, stirred by the wind. This part of Serpent's Lake was deep, over 50 feet in some places. If someone went in here, especially someone who couldn't swim well, any last words? Marcus asked almost politely. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The boy I'd loved was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. I hope it destroys you, I said quietly. I hope everything you've built crumbles. I hope you live long enough to regret this moment. Noted. He smiled. Goodbye, Valentina. Then he shoved me into the water. The cold was shocking, stealing the breath from my lungs. I went under immediately, the weight of my dress pulling me down. I fought my way to the surface, gasped for air, and Marcus was there, pushing my head back under. I grabbed his wrists, tried to pull them away, but he was so much stronger. My lungs burned. My vision blurred. I could see his face above the water, distorted, emotionless as he watched me drown. This is it, I thought as darkness crept in at the edges. This is how I die. But then I felt something else. A presence in the water with me. Something massive and ancient and utterly terrifying. Marcus must have felt it too, because suddenly his hands weren't on me anymore. I broke the surface, choking and gasping, just in time to see him backing away from the lake, his eyes wide with fear. What the hell, he started. And then something grabbed my ankle and pulled me under. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were your greatest enemy all along? Valentina just learned the cruelest lesson. Love can be the deadliest weapon. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have seen Marcus's betrayal coming, or were you as blindsided as Val? Because what happens next, let's just say the water holds more than death. Chapter 2. The Rogue King. I should have died in that water. The thing that grabbed my ankle pulled me down so fast I didn't have time to scream. Down, down, down into the black depths of Serpent's Lake, where the water was so cold it felt like knives cutting into my skin. My lungs were already compromised from Marcus's attempt to drown me. I had maybe 30 seconds before I lost consciousness. Maybe a minute before brain damage sets in. But the thing dragging me deeper wasn't trying to kill me. It was pulling me away from Marcus. Away from the surface. Toward the rocky underwater shelf on the far side of the lake where the current ran strong and the caves. My back hit a stone. The grip on my ankle released. And then, impossibly, I was being pushed up. Not toward where I'd entered the water, but toward a different part of the shore entirely, hidden by overhanging willows and thick underbrush. I broke the surface gasping and choking, my arms flailing for purchase. My hands found mud and rocks, and I dragged myself onto the shore like a half-drowned cat, collapsing face first into the dirt. For several minutes, I could do nothing but cough up like water and try to remember how to breathe. Every part of my body screamed in pain. My ribs where Marcus had shoved me. My throat where he grabbed me. My lungs from oxygen deprivation. But I was alive. Interesting. The voice came from directly above me, male and rough like gravel scraped across stone. I jerked my head up and immediately wished I hadn't. A man stood over me, and calling him merely a man felt like a criminal understatement. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall with shoulders broad enough to block out the moon. His hair was dark, almost black, falling past his shoulders in waves that looked like they'd never seen a brush. But it was his eyes that made my heart stop.
Gold.
Pure, molten gold that seemed to glow with their own inner light. No wolf's eyes were naturally that color, not even in shifted form. You're not human, I managed to croak out, my voice raw from lake water and screaming. Neither are you. He crouched down beside me, tilting his head with predatory curiosity. Though you seem to be doing an excellent impression of one. He wore all black, leather pants, boots, and a long coat that looked like it had seen better days. Scars crossed his knuckles and disappeared up his forearms. This was a man who'd survived things that would kill most wolves. Who are you? I tried to sit up and failed, my arms shaking too badly to support my weight. I think the better question is, who are you, little drowned rat? He reached out and grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet his unsettling gaze. And more importantly, why does your scent carry traces of wolfsbane derivative? I froze. What? You heard me. His grip tightened slightly, not painful but firm. Your blood reeks of it. Someone's been dosing you with a modified version of wolfsbane for years. Probably since childhood, based on how deeply it's integrated into your system. That's impossible. I would know if I was being poisoned. Would you? He released my chin and sat back on his heels. Wolfsbane derivative is designed to suppress the wolf without killing the human. Small doses over time, mixed with food or vitamins, completely undetectable unless you know what you're looking for. The symptoms. His golden eyes bored into mine. Inability to shift. Weakness. The appearance of being defective. The world tilted on its axis. All those years of shame. Of being called broken. Of believing there was something fundamentally wrong with me. No, I whispered.
Who would do that?
Why would anyone? Because you're dangerous. The man stood up and walked to the water's edge, staring across the lake toward where I could still hear the distant sounds of the harvest moon celebration. Someone wanted to keep you weak.
Keep you suppressed.
The question is who, and what are they afraid you'll become? I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the way my vision swam. You still haven't told me who you are. He turned back to face me, and in the moonlight, I could see the sharp angles of his face, the predatory gleam in those impossible eyes. Darius Nightborn, he said simply. Though you probably know me by my other title. My blood ran cold. The Rogue King. Every wolf in the Northern Territories knew that name. Darius Nightborn had been exiled 50 years ago after slaughtering half of his own pack in a single night. The official story said he'd gone feral, lost to bloodlust and madness. The Alpha Council had tried to execute him, but he'd escaped and vanished into the wilderness. Since then, he'd become a legend. A ghost story. The monster mothers used to scare their pups into behaving. They said he led an army of rogues. That he killed any wolf who crossed into his territory. That he was building power to one day return and destroy the pack system entirely. And he was standing right in front of me. You're wondering if the stories are true, Darius said, reading my expression with unsettling accuracy. Wondering if I really killed all those wolves. If I'm as dangerous as they say. Did you? The question came out before I could stop it. Yes. No hesitation. No remorse. Every single one deserved it. And I'd do it again. I should have been terrified. Should have been running. But I was too tired, too beaten down, too recently drowned to feel anything but numb curiosity. Why are you here? I asked. Why did you save me? I didn't save you. Darius moved closer, crouching down again, so we were eye level. You saved yourself. You fought. Even when that coward had his hands around your throat, even when you were drowning, you didn't stop fighting. That's what caught my attention. I don't understand. I've been watching Crimson Veil Pack for weeks, he said. Gathering intelligence. Waiting for the right opportunity. And then tonight, I see the future Alpha drag a struggling woman to the lake and try to drown her. So I got curious. His smile was sharp and dangerous. Imagine my surprise when I realized the woman he was trying to kill carries ancient bloodline markers beneath all that poison. Ancient bloodline? I shook my head. You're wrong. My family was ordinary. My father was beta, but he was beta by skill, not bloodline. We're not. Your mother's line. Darius interrupted. Claire Hartwood. Ring any bells. I went very still. How do you know my mother's maiden name? Because the Hartwood line is old. Very old. They're descended from the first wolves, the primals who could shift at will and commanded power that makes modern alphas look like puppies. He stood up and began pacing. The bloodline was thought to be extinct. The last known Hartwood died 70 years ago. Or so everyone believed. My mother never said anything about. Because she probably didn't know. Darius stopped pacing and looked at me. The Hartwoods learned to hide what they were after the culling wars. Too much power made them targets. So they suppressed their gifts, pretended to be ordinary wolves, married into common bloodlines to dilute the markers. He crouched down again, his golden eyes intense. But bloodlines like that don't just disappear, Valentina. They sleep. They wait. And when the right combination of genetics aligns. He reached out and touched the center of my chest, right over my heart. They wake up. I could feel heat radiating from his hand, spreading through my chest like warm honey. It should have felt threatening, invasive. Instead, it felt right. Like something inside me was responding to his touch. Someone in Crimson Veil knew what you were, Darius continued. Knew that if your wolf ever emerged, you'd be stronger than any alpha they'd ever seen.
So they poisoned you. Keep you weak.
Kept you believing you were defective. Alpha Rowan, I whispered, the pieces clicking together. Marcus's father. He's the one who took me in after my parents died. He's the one who made sure I had regular vitamin supplements to help with my condition. There's your poisoner. Darius removed his hand from my chest and stood up. Which means your boyfriend's betrayal runs deeper than you think. His father has been systematically destroying you since childhood.
Rage.
White hot and pure, flooded through my veins. Marcus knew. He had to have known. All those years of friendship, of comfort, of promises. He'd known I was being poisoned and said nothing. Did nothing. He didn't just betray me tonight. He'd been betraying me my entire life. I'm going to kill him, I said, my voice steady and cold. I'm going to make him suffer for what he's done. Good. Darius smiled, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. But not like this. Not weak and broken and half-drowned. First, we get that poison out of your system. Then we unlock what you really are. And then, his eyes gleamed with dark promise. Then we make Marcus steal and everyone who helped him regret the day they decided you weren't worth keeping alive. I looked up at this dangerous stranger, this exiled killer, this rogue king who had every reason to leave me to die, but hadn't. Why are you helping me? I asked. What do you get out of this? Darius was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those unnatural golden eyes. Crimson Veil Pack sits on the border of what used to be my territory, he said finally. 50 years ago, when they exiled me, they seized everything I'd built. Every alliance, every resource, every acre of land. They erased me from history and rewrote the narrative to make themselves heroes. He turned to look across the lake toward the distant pack house, where music and laughter still echoed through the night. I've spent 5 decades building power in the shadows, gathering rogues, forming alliances with wolves the pack system abandoned, waiting for the right moment to take back what's mine. He looked back at me. You, Valentina Cross, are going to be that moment. You want to use me as a weapon? I said flatly. I want to give you the power to become what you were always meant to be, Darius corrected. What you choose to do with that power is your decision. But I'm betting a woman who just got murdered by the man she loved is going to want revenge. He wasn't wrong. What's the catch? I asked. Nothing comes free. Smart girl. Darius extended his hand to help me up. Here's the deal. I will train you. I remove the poison from your system. I teach you to shift and fight and use the power in your blood. And in exchange, when you're ready, you help me destroy the pack system that's been rotting from the inside for decades. I stared at his outstretched hand. This was a deal with the devil. Darius Nightborn was a killer, an exile, everything I'd been taught to fear. But Marcus had tried to murder me. The pack I'd served loyally my entire life had poisoned me. And Natasha, my own cousin, had betrayed me with the man I loved. The old Valentina would have rejected this offer, would have found another way, would have believed in the goodness of the system. But the old Valentina died in Serpent's Lake. The woman sitting in the mud had nothing left to lose. I took Darius's hand. His grip was firm, calloused, and burning hot against my cold skin. He pulled me to my feet effortlessly, and I swayed, still weak from the drowning. Easy, he said, steadying me with a hand on my shoulder. Your body's been through trauma. You need rest and medical attention. Where are we going? I asked. My territory. It's about 20 miles north, deep in the Shadow Pine Forest. He shrugged out of his long coat and draped it over my shoulders. It was warm and smelled like smoke and pine and something wild. We'll need to move fast. Once they find you missing from the lake, they'll send out search parties. Let them search. I pulled the coat tighter around myself. I hope Marcus spends all night looking for my body. I hope he's terrified that someone will find out what he did. Darius's smile was approving. There's the rage I was hoping to see. Hold on to that, little wolf. You're going to need it for what comes next. We started walking away from the lake, into the dense forest that bordered Crimson Veil territory. Every step hurts. My wet dress clung to my skin, my hair dripped like water down my back, and my body felt like one giant bruise. But I didn't complain, didn't slow down, because with every step away from Crimson Veil, I felt something inside me shifting, changing. The broken girl Marcus had tried to kill was gone. Something new was being born in her place. One question, I said as we walked. Why tonight? You said you've been watching the pack for weeks. Why reveal yourself tonight, specifically? Darius was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Because I felt it, he said. You're wolf. When you went under that water, when you were drowning, something inside you woke up. Just for a second. Just long enough to fight back. He glanced at me. The poison suppresses your shift, but it can't kill your wolf entirely. She's been there all along, buried deep, waiting. And tonight, facing death, she tried to surface. I remembered that moment, that flash of heat in my chest, the sudden, inexplicable strength that let me fight Marcus even when I should have been too weak. "She's still there," I whispered. "She is." Darius nodded. "And once we flush that poison from your system, once we break down the barriers that have kept her caged for 2 decades, she's going to be magnificent." We walked in silence for a while. The sounds of the harvest moon celebration faded behind us until all I could hear was the wind in the trees and our footsteps on the forest floor. "What happened to your pack?" I asked eventually. The real story, not the propaganda. Darius's jaw tightened. My pack was Silvercrest. We were strong, prosperous, and respected. I was Alpha at 25, the youngest in generations. His voice went distant, remembering. "We had everything. And then the Alpha Council decided we had too much." "What do you mean?" "The pack system is built on maintaining balance," Darius explained. "No single pack can become too powerful or it threatens the Council's authority. So when Silvercrest started expanding, when we formed alliances and trade agreements that made us wealthy and influential." He smiled bitterly. "They had to put us down. They destroyed your pack? They tried." Darius's golden eyes flashed with old rage. "They sent assassins first, poisoned our water supply, killed 20 wolves before we figured out what was happening. Then they fabricated evidence that I'd gone feral. Told the other packs I was dangerous, unstable, a threat to everyone." He stopped walking and turned to face me. "They gave me a choice. Submit to exile and watch my pack be absorbed into neighboring territories, or fight back and watch them slaughter everyone I loved." His voice was hollow. "I chose exile, but some of my pack refused to let me go alone. 50 wolves followed me into the wilderness. The council had them all executed as rogues." "That's why you killed them," I said quietly. "The wolves who died. They were council enforcers. They were murderers." Darius's hands clenched into fists. Every single one had blood on their hands. "And yes, I killed them. Slowly, painfully. And I'd do it again without hesitation." I should have been horrified. Should have been questioning my decision to trust this man. But all I felt was understanding. "They took everything from you," I said. "And they made you the villain for fighting back. Just like they took everything from you and called it mercy." Darius started walking again. "That's what the pack system does, Valentina. It protects the powerful and crushes anyone who threatens the status quo. Your ancient bloodline? Your potential power? That makes you a threat. So they neutered you before you could become dangerous." "But I'm dangerous now," I said softly. Darius looked back at me, and his smile was fierce and proud. "Not yet," he said, "but you will be." We walked through the night, and with every mile, I felt the old Valentina falling away. The girl who'd loved Marcus Steele was dead. The woman who would rise in her place was going to burn Crimson Veil to the ground. Chapter 3. The Awakening. We reached Darius's territory just before dawn. The Shadow Pine Forest was aptly named. Ancient pine trees grew so thick here that even in daylight, the canopy blocked out most of the sun. In the pre-dawn darkness, it felt like walking through a cathedral made of shadows and whispers. I'd been stumbling for the last hour, running on nothing but spite and stubbornness. My wet dress had chafed my skin raw, my feet were bleeding in my ruined heels, and every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. But I didn't complain, didn't ask to stop, because showing weakness now would be admitting that Marcus had been right about me. "We're here," Darius said, pointing ahead. I looked up and blinked in surprise. I'd expected a cave or a rough camp. What I saw instead was a compound built into the base of a mountain. Stone buildings that looked like they'd been carved directly from the rock face, with wooden additions that blended seamlessly into the forest. Smoke rose from several chimneys. Lights glowed in the windows. This wasn't a rogue hideout. This was a settlement. As we approached, wolves began emerging from the buildings. Dozens of them, all watching us with cautious, assessing eyes. They were rough-looking, scarred, hard, the kind of wolves who'd survived things that would break most people. King Darius, a massive man said, stepping forward. He had to be nearly 7 feet tall with muscles that looked like they'd been carved from stone. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw. We heard the alarm. What happened? Found something interesting at Crimson Vale, Kane, Darius replied. He gestured to me. This is Valentina Cross. She'll be staying with us. Kane's dark eyes swept over me, taking in my bedraggled appearance with obvious skepticism. She looks half dead. She was fully dead about 3 hours ago, Darius said dryly. Crimson Vale's future alpha tried to drown her.
She survived.
Now she's ours. Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. I could feel their eyes on me, assessing, judging, wondering what possible use a broken, wolfless woman could be to the rogue king. She can't shift, a female voice called out from the crowd. I can smell it. She's defective. My spine stiffened. That word again. Defective. Say that again, I said, my voice hoarse but steady, and I'll show you exactly how defective I am. The woman who'd spoken stepped forward. She was beautiful in a dangerous way, tall and lean with silver blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. Everything about her screamed predator. Brave words for someone who looks like she can barely stand. The woman said, moving closer. What makes you think you belong here, little human? Enough, Lyra, Darius said sharply. Stand down. Why? Lyra's eyes never left mine. You taught us that weakness has no place in the pack, that we survive by being stronger than those who exiled us. So, what is she? She gestured dismissively at me. What possible use is a wolfless girl who got herself nearly killed by her own pack? I didn't get myself nearly killed, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I was betrayed by someone I trusted. There's a difference. Is there? Lyra smiled, and it wasn't kind. Because from where I'm standing, you look like a liability. We don't need dead weight. Something inside me snapped. I'd spent my entire life being told I was worthless, being looked at with pity or contempt, being dismissed as broken. And I was done with it. I stepped forward, closing the distance between Lyra and me. She was taller, stronger, and could shift into a killing machine in seconds. I was exhausted, injured, and human. But I was also furious. You want to know what makes me useful? I said softly. I know every weakness in Crimson Vale's defenses. I know which guards take bribes, which families are dissatisfied, which wolves are on the edge of rebellion. I know where Alpha Rowan keeps his private documents. I know the rotation schedule for border patrols. I know everything about a pack you want to destroy. I leaned closer, close enough to see my reflection in her cold eyes. And more than that, I continued, I have a reason to see them burn that you can't possibly understand. So yes, I'm weak right now. Yes, I can't shift. But I'm the key to getting you inside Crimson Vale's walls, and if you're too stupid to see the strategic value in that, then maybe you're the liability. Silence fell over the compound. Lyra stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile curved her lips. Maybe you're not completely useless after all, she said. We'll see if you survive long enough to make good on those promises. I'll survive, I said. I'm very good at surviving. Darius's hand landed on my shoulder, the only thing keeping me upright, honestly. Kane, get Dr. Chin, he ordered. Tell him we need a full medical workup and toxicology screening. Lyra, prepare the cleansing chamber. Everyone else, back to your duties. Show's over. The gathered wolves dispersed, though I could feel their curious glances following me as Darius led me toward the largest of the stone buildings. Inside was warmer and more civilized than I'd expected. Wooden floors, woven rugs, furniture that looked handmade but sturdy. We climbed a set of stairs to the second floor, and Darius opened a door to a small but comfortable room. This is yours, he said, guiding me inside. Private bathroom through that door. Clean clothes in the dresser. Rest while we wait for Dr. Chin. I looked around the room, the first space that had been truly mine in years. At the pack house, I'd always felt like a guest overstaying her welcome. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Darius leaned against the doorframe. What comes next is going to hurt. A lot. The process of flushing 20 years of poison from your system isn't gentle. I don't care about pain, I said. I care about getting strong enough to make Marcus regret he didn't make sure I was dead. Darius studied me for a long moment. That rage is going to keep you alive through what's coming. But Valentina, revenge is a tool, not a purpose. Don't let it consume you so completely that you forget what you're really fighting for. And what am I fighting for? I asked. That's something you'll have to figure out yourself. He pushed off from the doorframe. Get cleaned up. Dr. Chen will be here soon. He left, closing the door behind him. I stood alone in the quiet room, finally allowing myself to acknowledge how close to collapse I really was. My legs were shaking. My vision kept blurring. The adrenaline that had kept me moving for hours was wearing off, leaving nothing but pain and exhaustion. I stumbled to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. My dark auburn hair hung in tangled, lakeweed strands. My face was pale except for the bruises forming on my cheek and jaw where Marcus had hit me. My hazel eyes, usually soft and uncertain, looked hard. Feral. I looked like someone who died and clawed her way back from hell. Good. I stripped off the ruined silver dress, the one Marcus had sent me to wear to what was supposed to be our engagement announcement, and left it in a wet, pathetic heap on the floor. Let it rot there. I never wanted to see it again. The shower was hot enough to scald, and I stood under the spray until the water ran clear, washing away the lake, the mud, the touch of Marcus's hands around my throat. By the time I emerged, wrapped in a towel, I could hear voices in the main room. I dressed quickly in the clothes from the dresser, simple black pants, and a soft gray sweater that was too big but warm. When I opened the bathroom door, I found Darius with an elderly Asian man who had to be Dr. Chen. Miss Cross, Dr. Chen said with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I'm glad to see you on your feet. When Darius described your condition, I prepared for someone much worse off. I'm tougher than I look, I said. I suspect you'll need to be. Dr. Chen set down his medical bag. Darius tells me you've been dosed with wolfsbane derivative for approximately 20 years. Is that correct? Apparently. I sat on the edge of the bed. I had no idea until tonight. The beauty and horror of wolfsbane derivative, Dr. Chen said as he began unpacking instruments, is that it's virtually undetectable. It integrates into the cellular structure, becomes part of your body chemistry. The wolf spirit remains present, but completely inaccessible. He took my wrist, checking my pulse. The good news is that it can be removed. The bad news is that the process is extremely painful and dangerous. We'll be essentially forcing your body to reject 20 years of accumulated toxins all at once. How dangerous? I asked. There's a 30% mortality rate, Dr. Chen said bluntly. Your body will go into shock. You'll experience seizures, hallucinations, complete loss of motor function. We'll need to restrain you to prevent injury. And there's a possibility that even if you survive, your wolf may be too damaged to ever fully emerge. But there's a chance, I said. A chance I could shift. There is. Dr. Chen pulled out a vial of clear liquid. This is the chelation agent. We'll administer it intravenously over the next 12 hours. Your body's reaction should begin within minutes. I looked at Darius. You've done this before? Removed wolfsbane derivative from someone. Twice, he said. One wolf survived and can now shift normally. The other. He shook his head. Didn't make it through the first night. Reassuring, I said dryly. I'm not going to lie to you, Valentina, Darius said, his golden eyes serious. This could kill you. If you want to wait, take some time to recover from tonight's trauma first. No, I cut him off. We do this now, tonight. Because every hour I spend a week is another hour Marcus and his father get away with what they've done. Every hour is another hour they think they've won. I held out my arm to Dr. Chen. Start the treatment. Dr. Chen looked at Darius, who nodded. Then the doctor swabbed my arm and inserted the 4 with practiced efficiency. The first infusion will take about an hour, he said. You should start feeling the effects in 15 to 20 minutes. Nausea, dizziness, elevated heart rate. When the real purging begins, you'll know. He wasn't wrong. 20 minutes later, I felt like my blood was on fire. Heat spread from the foresight at my arm, across my chest, down into my core. My heart began racing, hammering so hard, I thought my ribs might crack. Normal reaction, Dr. Chen said, monitoring my vitals. Your body recognizes the chelation agent and is beginning to respond. Just breathe through it. But breathing was getting harder. My chest felt tight, constricted. The room started spinning. Darius, I gasped. Something's wrong. Nothing's wrong, he said, appearing beside me. Your body is fighting. This is what it's supposed to feel like. It feels like dying. You've already died once tonight. His hand found mine, surprisingly gentle. You can survive this too. The pain escalated. It felt like every cell in my body was being torn apart and rebuilt. I could hear someone screaming and distantly realized it was me. Restrain her, Dr. Chen ordered. Hands, Darius's hands, pressed me back against the bed. Straps went across my chest, my wrists, my ankles. I thrashed against them, my body convulsing. Let me go, I sobbed. Please, it hurts, it hurts. I know. Darius's voice was close to my ear. But you don't get to quit, Valentina. You don't get to give up. Because Marcus Steele is out there right now, probably celebrating your death. Probably holding Natasha. Probably thinking he got away with murder. The rage that flared at those words gave me something to focus on. Something other than the pain. That's it, Darius encouraged. Hold on to that anger. Let it burn hotter than the pain. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time became meaningless in a storm of agony consuming my body. I hallucinated. I saw my mother standing at the foot of the bed, her face sad and disappointed. Saw Marcus's hands around my throat. Saw Natasha laughing as I drowned. They're not real, Darius's voice kept saying. Stay with me, Valentina. Stay here. At some point during the long night, something inside me shifted. The pain didn't lessen, but I became aware of something else. A presence. Deep in my chest, buried beneath layers of poison and suppression. My wolf. She was weak, barely more than a whisper, but she was there. Fighting alongside me. Clawing her way toward the surface. Sister, I thought, reaching for her with everything I had.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry I didn't know. And impossibly, I felt her respond. A brush of warmth. A spark of recognition. We survived, she seemed to say. Together. The first rays of dawn were filtering through the window when the convulsions finally stopped. I lay exhausted, drenched in sweat, barely conscious. Vitals are stabilizing, Dr. Chen said, sounding relieved. Heart rate is coming down. Blood pressure normalizing. I think she's through the worst of it. Valentina, Darius said softly. Can you hear me? I managed a weak nod. The first treatment is complete, he said.
You survived.
But we'll need to do this 11 more times over the next 6 days to fully purge the poison. 11 more, I whispered. Times like this. Possibly worse, Dr. Chen admitted. As we remove more of the toxin, your wolf will become stronger and more desperate to break free. The conflict between her emergence and the remaining poison could be intense.
Do it, I said.
I don't care how bad it gets. We will finish this. Darius smiled, and there was respect in his golden eyes. You're tougher than most wolves I know, and you can't even shift yet. Yet, I agreed. But I will. Over the next 6 days, I learned the true meaning of suffering. Each treatment was worse than the last. My body rejected the chelation agent violently. I seized, hallucinated, screamed until my voice gave out. They had to keep me sedated between treatments because the pain was so intense I couldn't function. But with each session, I felt my wolf growing stronger. On the 3rd day, during one of my lucid moments, Lyra visited. You're still alive, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Impressive. Most wolves would have quit by now. I'm not most wolves, I said, my voice hoarse from screaming. No, Lyra agreed. You're not. She studied me with those ice chip eyes. I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I thought you were weak. A liability. I was wrong. Yes, you were, I said. Lyra laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. I like you, Valentina Cross. When you survive this and finally shift, I'll teach you how to fight properly. Can't have the Rogue King's secret weapon not knowing how to use her claws. I'd like that, I said. On the 5th day, something extraordinary happened. I was in the middle of a treatment, convulsing and restrained, when suddenly the pain stopped. Just stopped. I could feel my wolf fully present for the first time. Not buried, not suppressed, but there. She was weak and exhausted, but alive and aware. Ready? She asked. And I was. The shift began. It wasn't smooth like I'd imagined. My bones cracked and reformed with sounds like gunshots. My spine extended, my jaw reconstructed itself, my hands became paws. The pain was incredible, worse than anything I'd experienced during the treatments. But it was a good pain, a necessary pain, the pain of becoming what I was always meant to be. When it was over, I stood on 4 legs for the first time in my life. I was a wolf. Not large, smaller than an alpha male, probably average for a female, but strong.
Fast. Alive.
Through wolf eyes, I saw Darius standing nearby, his expression one of fierce pride. Welcome back, he said quietly. You've been gone a long time. I shifted back to human form, the transition easier this time. I was naked, trembling, covered in sweat. But I was whole. I can shift, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I can finally shift. You can do more than shift, Dr. Chen said, looking at his instruments with wonder. Valentina, your baseline vitals in wolf form are extraordinary. You're stronger than a beta, possibly approaching alpha-level capabilities. Whatever bloodline you carry, it's remarkably powerful. I looked at my hands, human hands that could become claws. In my body that could become something wild and fierce. 24 years of being told I was broken. 24 years of shame and weakness.
Gone.
Marcus Steele is going to regret he didn't kill me properly, I said softly. Darius smiled that dangerous smile.
Yes, he is.
But first we train. Your wolf is awake, but she's untested. We need to make you a warrior, Valentina. And that starts tomorrow. I stood up, wrapping the sheet around myself, feeling stronger than I ever had in my life. The broken girl was gone. The wolf had risen. And the Crimson Veil Pack had no idea what was coming for them. Chapter 4. The Warrior's Path. I woke the morning after my first shift feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. Every muscle in my body screamed in protest as I tried to sit up. My bones ached from the transformation. My skin felt too tight, like it was still trying to figure out whether it belonged to a human or a wolf. But underneath the pain was something else. Something that made me smile despite the discomfort.
Power.
For the first time in my life, I could feel it humming beneath my skin. My wolf was there, present and aware, no longer a distant dream, but a living part of me. She was restless, eager to run, to hunt, to test the limits of what we could do together. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Are you awake? Lyra's voice called. Unfortunately, I croaked. She opened the door and walked in carrying a tray with food and water. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore fitted training clothes that showed off her lean, muscular build. You look like death, she observed cheerfully, setting the tray on the bedside table. Which means you're right on schedule. Everyone feels like garbage after their first shift. Is this normal? I asked, gratefully accepting the water she handed me. Completely. Your body just reorganized itself at a cellular level. It needs time to adjust. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed.
Eat.
You'll need the energy. Darius wants you in the training yard in an hour. I nearly choked on my water. An hour? I can barely move. Then you better start moving now, Lyra said without sympathy. Welcome to life with the Rogue King, sweetheart. We don't coddle the weak here. You either adapt or you break. She stood up and headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you've already proven you're not weak. Now you just need to prove you're not useless. After she left, I forced myself to eat the food she'd brought, some kind of protein-heavy stew that tasted better than anything I'd eaten at Crimson Vale's fancy dinners. My body absorbed it gratefully, already working to repair the damage from yesterday's transformation. 50 minutes later, I made my way downstairs and out to what Lyra had called the training yard. It was actually a large clearing that had been converted into an outdoor combat arena. The ground was packed with dirt and sand. Training dummies stood at various points. Weapon racks lined one wall, and in the center, Darius waited. He'd changed from the dark clothes he usually wore into fitted training gear that displayed the full, intimidating scope of his physique. Scars crisscrossed his arms and torso, a roadmap of battles survived. His golden eyes tracked my approach with predatory focus. "You're late," he said. I glanced at the sun, calculating. By 3 minutes. 3 minutes is the difference between life and death in combat, Darius replied. Again. I turned around and walked back toward the building. "What are you doing?" he called. "Following orders," I said without looking back. "You said again. So I'm going to enter again, but this time I'll be early." Behind me, I heard Lyra laugh. "Oh, I like her." When I returned to the training yard 60 seconds later, Darius was smiling slightly.
"Better," he said.
"Now, let's see what you can actually do. Shift." The command in his voice triggered something instinctive. My wolf rose to the surface eagerly, and this time the transformation was faster, smoother, still painful, but bearable. Within seconds, I stood on 4 legs, looking at the world through wolf eyes. Darius circled me, assessing. "You're smaller than I expected. Maybe 90 pounds in wolf form. That puts you at the lower end of average for a female." I felt a flash of disappointment. After all that pain, after unlocking my supposedly powerful bloodline, I was average? "Don't pout," Darius said, reading my body language with unsettling accuracy. "Size isn't everything. Some of the deadliest wolves I've known were small and fast rather than large and strong." He stopped in front of me. "Show me your speed. Run to that tree line and back." I took off, my wolf's instincts guiding me. The world blurred as I ran faster than I'd ever moved as a human. The wind in my fur, the ground flying beneath my paws, it was intoxicating. I reached the tree line in seconds and turned back, pushing myself even harder on the return. When I skidded to a stop in front of Darius, I was barely winded. "Impressive," he acknowledged. "You're fast. Faster than most betas I've seen. That's your first advantage." He gestured to a training dummy. "Now show me your strength. Attack that target. Full force, no holding back." I circled the dummy, my wolf's hunting instincts taking over. Then I pounced, my jaws clamping onto the dummy's throat. I shook my head violently, the way I'd seen other wolves do in training exercises, and heard a satisfying rip as fabric and stuffing tore free. "Good instincts," Darius said, "but inefficient. You're wasting energy with that shaking motion. In a real fight, you need to bite once, hard enough to sever the jugular or crush the windpipe, then move on to the next threat." He shifted into his own wolf form, and I understood why they called him the Rogue King. Darius's wolf was massive, easily twice my size, with midnight black fur and those same unnatural golden eyes. He moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large, all coiled muscle and lethal power. He approached the dummy and demonstrated, his jaws closing on the target's throat with surgical precision. I heard bone crack, actual bone reinforcement inside the training dummy, and then he released the movement economical and devastating. Like that, his voice said in my mind, and I was startled. "You can mind speak?" I asked, testing the connection. "All wolves can communicate mentally with their pack," Darius replied. "You'll learn to control it with practice. Now, try again. Precise strike, no wasted motion." We trained for hours. Attack patterns, evasion techniques, using my smaller size as an advantage rather than a weakness. Darius was a brutal teacher, Every mistake earned a sharp correction, sometimes verbal, sometimes a physical demonstration that left me sprawled in the dirt. But I learned fast. My wolf's instincts combined with my human intelligence created a learning curve that seemed to surprise even Darius. "Your adaptability is remarkable," he said as we took a water break. We'd both shifted back to human form, though I'd learned to keep a robe nearby for these transitions. Most new shifters take weeks to coordinate their wolf's instincts with their human reasoning. You're doing it in hours. "Maybe because I spent 24 years learning to adapt," I said, gulping water. "When you're the weakest member of a pack, you get very good at finding advantages wherever you can. That weakness made you strong in ways you don't even realize yet," Darius said. He studied me thoughtfully. "You're not going to be a frontline fighter, Valentina. You don't have the size or raw strength for that. But you could be something more dangerous." "What do you mean?" "An assassin," Lyra said, entering the training yard. She'd been watching from the sidelines. "Someone who strikes from the shadows and disappears before the enemy knows what hit them." I considered that. The old Valentina would have been horrified at the idea of becoming a killer. But the old Valentina was dead. "Teach me," I said. Over the next 3 weeks, my training intensified. Darius worked with me every morning on combat fundamentals, how to use my speed to offset my size disadvantage, how to target vulnerable points, how to fight dirty and survive against larger opponents. "There's no honor in a fair fight," he told me repeatedly. "Honor gets you killed. Your job is to survive and eliminate threats by any means necessary." Lyra took over in the afternoons, teaching me stealth and infiltration. How to move silently in both human and wolf form. How to mask my scent. How to read terrain and use it to my advantage. "You're built for speed and precision," she explained. "That makes you perfect for reconnaissance and targeted elimination. While the big wolves are fighting head-on, you slip around the flank and take out key targets." In the evenings, I studied with Kane, the massive wolf who'd greeted us that first night. Despite his intimidating appearance, he was patient and thorough as he taught me pack dynamics, territory law, and the complex politics that govern the shifter world. "Knowledge is a weapon," Kane said. "The more you understand about how the pack system works, the better you can exploit its weaknesses." I absorbed everything like a sponge. Every lesson, every technique, every piece of information was another tool I could use against Crimson Veil. But it wasn't all training and preparation. Living among Darius's rogues taught me things I'd never learned in Crimson Veil's structured pack environment. These wolves weren't rogues because they were weak or criminal. They were here because the pack system had failed them. There was Maya, a young Omega who'd been sold to an abusive alpha by her own parents for political advantage. She'd escaped and found her way to Darius, who'd killed the alpha and his enforcers when they came looking for her. There was Jacob, a beta who'd questioned his alpha's decision to execute a group of wolves for minor infractions. When he'd spoken up, he'd been exiled as a troublemaker. There was Elena, a healer who'd been cast out for refusing to let a wounded rogue die. The pack law said rogues deserved no mercy, but Elena's conscience had overridden her loyalty. Each of them had a story. Each of them had been betrayed by the system they'd trusted to protect them. "The pack system is supposed to be about unity and strength," I said to Darius one night. We were sitting by a fire after a particularly brutal training session. "But all I see is a hierarchy that protects the powerful and crushes anyone who threatens the status quo." "Now you're beginning to understand," Darius said. "The pack system worked once, generations ago, when it was truly about protecting each other. But over time, it became about maintaining power, about keeping alphas in control and everyone else in line." He stared into the flames. "That's why I'm building something different here. Not a traditional pack with strict hierarchies and absolute alpha authority, but a coalition of wolves who choose to stand together because they believe in something better." "And what happens when you get your revenge on the Alpha Council?" I asked. "What happens after you tear down the system?" "We build something new," Darius said simply. "Something that values strength but doesn't punish weakness. Something that gives every wolf, Alpha, Beta, Omega, a voice in their own fate." It sounded idealistic. Impossible, even. But looking around at the wolves who'd found sanctuary here, I started to believe it might be possible. On the 21st day of my training, Darius declared I was ready for a field test. There's a supply convoy heading from Iron Peak Pack to Crimson Vale tomorrow night, he explained, spreading a map across the table. They're transporting weapons and medical supplies. We're going to intercept it. My heart jumped. Crimson Vale? Are you sure I'm ready? You won't be going to the pack itself, Darius clarified. The convoy passes through neutral territory about 10 miles from Crimson Vale's borders. We hit them there, take the supplies, and leave before anyone can respond. What's my role? I asked. Scout, Lyra said. You'll shift, run ahead of our main force, assess the convoy's defenses, and report back. If there's an opportunity for a quick strike, you take it. Otherwise, you provide intelligence and stay out of the main fight. I can do that, I said, trying to sound confident. You'll do more than that, Darius said. This is your chance to prove you're not just a victim looking for revenge. You're a warrior, a member of this coalition. The next night, I found myself running through the forest in wolf form with a strike team of 12 wolves. Darius led in his massive black wolf form. Lyra ran at his right flank, her silver-gray wolf sleek and deadly. Cain brought up the rear, his dark brown wolf built like a tank. And I was the scout, racing ahead through the darkness. My enhanced senses picked up everything: the scent of prey in the underbrush, the sound of wind through the trees, the distant rumble of vehicles on the old logging road. Contact, I reported through the pack link. 2 trucks for guards visible. 2 in wolf form, 2 humans with rifles. Defensive formation? Darius asked. I circled closer, staying downwind and hidden in the shadows. Loose. They're not expecting trouble. The wolf guards are bored, not paying attention. The humans are smoking and talking. Can you take one of the humans without alerting the others? Lyra's voice was clinical, professional. My wolf's instincts warred with my human hesitation. These were guards doing their jobs. Not evil, just employed. But they were also bringing weapons to Crimson Vale. Weapons that might be used against wolves like the ones who'd taken me in. I can, I replied. Then do it, Darius ordered. Quick and clean. We move in 60 seconds regardless. I shifted to human form, pulling on the dark clothing I'd tied around my leg. In human form, I was quieter, more controlled. I circled around until I was behind the convoy, approaching the rear guard. He never saw me coming. I moved fast, using the technique Lyra had drilled into me. My hand covered his mouth, muffling any sound. My other hand found the pressure point on his neck. He went limp in seconds, unconscious but alive. I dragged him into the underbrush and shifted back to wolf form. 1 down, I reported. South side clear. Good, Darius said, and there was approval in his mental tone. Hold position. The strike team hit the convoy like a thunderstorm. Darius's massive black wolf slammed into one of the wolf guards, taking him down in seconds. Lyra and 2 others disabled the second wolf guard with coordinated precision. Cain crashed through the truck's cab, sending the driver fleeing into the forest. It was over in less than 2 minutes. No one died. The guards were restrained. The driver sent running with a message for Crimson Vale. The Rogue King sends his regards. And the supplies were ours. You did well, Darius said to me later as we loaded the stolen goods onto our own vehicles. He was back in human form, looking satisfied with the operation. Clean takedown, good intelligence, no hesitation when it mattered. I knocked him unconscious, I said. I didn't kill him. Because killing wasn't necessary, Darius replied. I don't want mindless killers, Valentina. I want warriors who can make strategic decisions. You proved tonight that you can. On the drive back to Shadowpine, I stared out the window at the dark forest and thought about what I'd become. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a broken girl who couldn't shift, who'd been murdered and left to drown. Now I was a warrior, a member of a rogue coalition. Someone who could take down an armed guard without hesitation. Marcus wouldn't recognize me if he saw me now. And that thought made me smile. What are you thinking about? Lyra asked from the driver's seat. Revenge, I said honestly. Good, she replied. Because Darius has been planning something. And I think you're going to like it. When we returned to the compound, Darius gathered the strike team in the main hall. The convoy raid was a success, he announced. But more importantly, it sends a message. Crimson Vale's supply lines aren't as secure as they think. Their territory isn't as protected as they believe. He looked directly at me. Alpha Rowan Steele is dying. According to our intelligence, he has weeks left, maybe a month. Which means Marcus will be taking over as Alpha soon. My wolf snarled at the mention of Marcus's name. When the succession happens, there will be a ceremony, Darius continued. A formal recognition by the Alpha Council and the neighboring packs. It's tradition, and Marcus won't skip it because he needs to establish legitimacy. You want to attack during the ceremony, I guessed. No, Darius said, and his smile was dangerous. I want you to attend it. The room went silent. What? I breathed. You're going to walk into that ceremony, alive and powerful, and show Marcus Steele exactly what he failed to kill. Darius's golden eyes gleamed. You're going to stand in front of the entire pack and the Alpha Council and destroy his credibility before he even takes power. They'll kill her, Kane protested. The moment they realize who she is. They can't, Darius interrupted. Not if she's under the protection of another Alpha. Not if she's there as an official representative of a recognized pack. You want to claim pack status, Lyra said, understanding Dawn. You want the Alpha Council to recognize Shadowpine Coalition as a legitimate pack. Exactly, Darius confirmed. We've been building toward this for years. We have the numbers, the resources, the territory. And now we have something we didn't have before. He looked at me. We have a wolf with ancient bloodline markers. A wolf who was poisoned by an Alpha and left for dead. A wolf whose story will make the Council question everything they think they know about Crimson Vale's leadership. You're going to use me as political ammunition, I said. I'm going to give you a platform to expose the truth, Darius corrected. What you do with that platform is your choice. But Valentina, this is your chance. Your chance to make Marcus face what he's done. Your chance to bring down Alpha Rowan's legacy. Your chance to get justice. I thought about Marcus's hands around my throat, about Natasha's betrayal, about 24 years of being told I was broken while they poisoned me. When is the ceremony? I asked. 3 weeks, Darius said. Then we have 3 weeks to make sure I'm ready, I said. Because I'm not just going to expose Marcus Steele. I'm going to destroy him. Darius smiled, fierce and proud. That's my girl. Over the next 3 weeks, my training took on a new focus. It wasn't just about combat anymore. It was about politics, presentation, and psychological warfare. Kane taught me Alpha Council protocols, the formal language and behaviors expected at official ceremonies. Maya, who'd grown up in a high-ranking pack family before her exile, coached me on etiquette and how to carry myself with authority. And Darius himself worked with me on my testimony, how to present the facts in a way that would damn Crimson Vale without making me look like a vengeful victim. The Council respects strength, he explained. If you go in there broken and pleading, they'll dismiss you as weak and protect their own. But if you go in there powerful, confident, presenting evidence rather than accusations, they'll have to listen. We also prepared for the possibility that things would go wrong. Escape routes, backup plans, contingencies if Crimson Vale tried to attack me despite Council protection. They might try to discredit you, Lyra warned. Call you a liar. Say you're mentally unstable. Marcus will fight dirty.
Let him, I said.
I have something he doesn't.
What's that? She asked.
The truth. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I stood in the compound's courtyard, looking up at the full moon, the same moon that had been shining when Marcus tried to kill me. Nervous, Darius's voice came from behind me. Terrified, I admitted. What if it doesn't work? What if the Council sides with Crimson Vale? What if? Then we fight, Darius said simply. He came to stand beside me. But it will work, Valentina. Because you're not the same frightened girl Marcus pushed into that lake. You're a warrior now. A survivor. And when you walk into that ceremony tomorrow, everyone there will see it. I looked at him, this dangerous, exiled wolf who'd saved my life and given me the tools to reclaim my power. Why are you really doing this? I asked. It's not just about revenge on the Alpha Council. It's not just about getting recognized as a legitimate pack. What do you really want, Darius? He was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes reflecting the moonlight. I want to prove that the pack system doesn't have to be corrupt, he said finally. That wolves can be strong without being cruel. That we can protect each other without demanding absolute obedience. That there's another way. He looked at me. And I want to watch Marcus Steele's face when he realizes the woman he tried to murder is standing in front of him, more powerful than he could have ever imagined. I smiled. That does sound satisfying. Get some sleep, Darius said. Tomorrow, we change everything. But I didn't sleep. I spent the night preparing, reviewing my testimony, and steadying my nerves. Because tomorrow, I was walking back into Crimson Vale. And I was going to make them all pay. Chapter 5, The Revelation. The Crimson Vale Pack house looked exactly as I remembered it, a sprawling estate of red brick and white columns that spoke of old money and older power. But seeing it now, after everything I'd learned, it looked different. Less impressive. More like a monument to corruption dressed up as tradition. I arrived with Darius and a small delegation from Shadowpine Coalition, Lyra, Kane, and 3 other high-ranking wolves. We traveled in sleek black vehicles that announced our presence, without apology. We weren't sneaking in. We were making a statement. The Alpha succession ceremony was being held in the Grand Hall, a massive room where Crimson Vale hosted official pack business and council events. As we pulled up to the entrance, I could see wolves gathering, not just from Crimson Vale, but from neighboring packs and the Alpha Council itself. This was going to be witnessed by everyone who mattered in the Northern Territories. Perfect. Remember the plan, Darius said quietly as we exited the vehicles. He looked devastating in a formal black suit, every inch the Alpha despite his rogue status. We enter, we observe, and we wait for the right moment. The council has agreed to hear your testimony after Marcus's official recognition. And if Crimson Vale tries to stop me before then? I asked. They won't, Lyra said confidently. She wore a fitted gray dress that somehow made her look even more dangerous than her usual combat gear. Council law prohibits violence during succession ceremonies. They can glare and whisper all they want, but they can't touch you. I took a deep breath, smoothing down the dress Darius had commissioned for this occasion. It was deep emerald green, elegant but not ostentatious, with a high collar that covered the faint scars still visible on my throat from where Marcus had strangled me. Those scars were evidence. I wanted them hidden for now, revealed only when I chose. We approached the entrance where 2 Crimson Vale guards stood watch. Their eyes widened when they saw Darius. The Rogue King, one of them said, his hand moving toward his weapon. Alpha Darius, Nightborn of Shadowpine Coalition, Darius corrected coldly. Here by official invitation of the Alpha Council to witness the succession ceremony. Unless you want to explain to Council Head Aldrich why you're violating ceremony protocols, I suggest you step aside. The guards exchanged uncertain looks, then moved. We entered the Grand Hall, and immediately every conversation stopped. Hundreds of wolves turned to stare at our group. I could feel the weight of their attention, their curiosity, their hostility. Let them stare. Let them wonder. The Grand Hall was decorated for celebration. Banners in Crimson Vale's colors hung from the rafters. Tables were laden with food and wine, and at the far end of the room stood a raised platform where the succession would take place. And standing on that platform, looking confident and powerful in an expensive suit, was Marcus Steele. Our eyes met across the crowded hall. I watched his face go through a fascinating progression of emotions, confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then pure, undiluted terror. The wine glass in his hand slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Beside him, Natasha turned to see what had caused his reaction. When she saw me, she went pale as death. "Is that?" someone whispered nearby. "It can't be. Valentina Cross? She's supposed to be dead." The whispers spread like wildfire through the hall. Wolves who'd known me, who'd pitted me, who dismissed me as the defective girl, now stared in shock at the woman standing beside the infamous rogue king. "Let them talk," Darius murmured. "Let them wonder. This is psychological warfare, and we're already winning." We moved through the crowd toward the seating area reserved for visiting pack representatives. Wolves scrambled to get out of our way. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. All of them looked confused. As we took our seats, an elderly man in formal robes approached. I recognized him from Kane's lessons. Aldrich Thornheart, head of the Alpha Council, one of the most powerful wolves in the Northern Territories. "Alpha Nightborn," Aldrich said, his voice carrying the weight of authority and age. "Your presence here is unexpected, but not unwelcome, I trust," Darius replied smoothly. "Shadowpine Coalition has submitted all required documentation for pack recognition. We have territory, resources, and wolves who've sworn loyalty. We meet every criterion for legitimate pack status." "Your application is under review," Aldrich said carefully. His sharp gray eyes moved to me. "And you've brought an interesting guest. Unless I'm very much mistaken, that's Valentina Cross, who, according to Crimson Veil's official report, tragically drowned in Serpent's Lake 4 weeks ago." "The reports of my death were premature," I said, meeting his gaze steadily, as were the assumptions about my inability to shift. I let just a hint of my wolf rise to the surface, enough that my eyes flashed with amber fire, enough that every dominant wolf in the vicinity felt the pulse of power that shouldn't exist in someone they dismissed as defective. Aldrich's eyebrows rose. "Remarkable. It seems Crimson Veil's intelligence was flawed." He looked between Darius and me. "I assume there's a story here?" "An extensive one," Darius confirmed, "which Miss Cross would like to share with the council. Officially." "This is highly irregular," Aldrich began. "So is the attempted murder of a pack member with ancient bloodline markers," Darius countered. "So is systematic poisoning of a child to suppress their wolf. So is falsifying official reports to cover up crimes. Irregular seems to be Crimson Veil's specialty." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Nearby wolves had stopped even pretending not to eavesdrop. This was explosive, and everyone knew it. Aldrich studied us both for a long moment. "These are serious accusations. Which is why I'm prepared to make them formally, under council witness, with evidence to support every claim," I said. Before Aldrich could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "This is absurd." Marcus had descended from the platform and was pushing through the crowd toward us. His face was flushed with anger, or maybe fear disguised as anger. Whatever lies this woman is spreading, they're the delusions of an unstable mind. Valentina Cross was troubled, mentally unwell, and tragically took her own life. "I was murdered," I said clearly, loudly enough that everyone in the vicinity could hear. "You strangled me, dragged me to Serpent's Lake, and held me underwater until you thought I was dead. Then you left me there and went back to celebrate your engagement to my cousin." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcus's expression shifted from anger to something uglier. "You're insane," he said. "I tried to help you, tried to get you professional support for your delusions, but you refused treatment. This is exactly why you were considered unstable." "Is that the story you're going with?" I asked calmly. "That I'm crazy? Because I have evidence that suggests otherwise." "What evidence could you possibly?" "The wolfsbane derivative in my system," I interrupted. "The poison that's been suppressing my wolf since I was a child. The poison that Dr. Chen," I gestured to where our healer stood in our delegation, "extracted and analyzed. The poison that matches samples found in the private medical storage in your father's office." Marcus's face went from flushed to ashen. "That's impossible," he stammered. "You're lying. My father would never." "Your father knew exactly what I was," I said, standing up. The crowd parted, giving us space like this was a formal challenge. "He knew I carried the Heartwood bloodline. He knew that if I ever shifted, I would be more powerful than any alpha in this territory."
"So he poisoned me."
"Systematically. For 24 years. To keep me weak and controllable." This is slander. Natasha's voice joined the fray. She descended from the platform as well. Her pregnancy, real or fabricated, I still wasn't sure, displayed prominently in a fitted dress. Valentina has always been jealous of those who can shift. This is just another desperate attempt to gain attention. Jealous, I repeated, looking at her with something between pity and contempt. You're right, Natasha. I was jealous. Jealous that you could shift while I couldn't. Jealous that you seemed to have everything I wanted. But then I learned why I couldn't shift. And do you know what I felt then? I stepped closer to her, letting my wolf's presence radiate from me. Not threatening, council law prohibited that, but undeniable. Relief, I said softly, because I realized I was never defective. I was sabotaged. And once that sabotage was removed, once the poison was flushed from my system, I became exactly what Crimson Veil feared I would become. I shifted. Not fully. That would have been a violation of ceremony protocol. But enough. My eyes changed, glowing with amber fire. My canines lengthened. My nails became claws. And the power that radiated from me made every wolf in the vicinity take an instinctive step back. Ancient bloodline, someone whispered in the crowd. She really does carry heartwood markers. Natasha stumbled backward, her face pale. Marcus looked like he might be sick. This proves nothing. He tried again, but his voice was weak now. Desperate. Even if you were poisoned, which is a wild accusation, that doesn't mean I tried to kill you. You're right, I said, shifting back to human form. Testimony alone isn't enough, which is why I have this. I pulled a small device from my dress pocket, a recording crystal, the kind used for official pact documentation. Darius had spent a fortune acquiring it from a tech-savvy rogue who specialized in magical surveillance. What is that? Marcus demanded. Insurance, I said. You see, when you dragged me to Serpent's Lake that night, you were so confident, so certain you were going to get away with murder. You even explained your whole plan. How you'd make it look like suicide. How the pack would mourn poor, broken Valentina. How no one would ever suspect the beloved future alpha. I held up the crystal. You were so arrogant, you never thought to check if someone was listening. If something was recording. This was a bluff. The crystal didn't contain a recording of that night. That would have been impossible. But it contained something almost as good. Dr. Chen's medical analysis of the poison in my system, testimony from witnesses who'd seen Marcus drag me toward the lake, and a detailed timeline that corroborated my story. Marcus didn't know that, though. And the panic in his eyes told me the bluff was working. You can't. That's illegal. Recording without consent, he stammered. Is perfectly legal when documenting a crime in progress, Aldrich said, his voice cutting through Marcus's panic. The council had approached, his expression grave. I think we need to hear what's on that recording, Miss Cross. With pleasure, I said, handing him the crystal. This is a travesty. A new voice boomed across the hall. Alpha Rowan Steele himself appeared, supported by 2 attendants. He looked terrible, gaunt, gray-skinned, clearly dying. But his eyes still burned with the authority of an alpha who'd ruled for decades. My son is innocent, Rowan declared, his voice weak but defiant. This woman is a liar and a troublemaker. She's always been unstable, always been. Poisoned. I finished for him. By you. On your orders. Because you knew what I was, and you were terrified of it. I walked toward him, and despite his attendants, despite his dying body trying to maintain alpha dominance, Rowan flinched. I remember when my parents died, I said quietly, but in the silent hall, everyone could hear. I was 6 years old. You told me it was an accident. Bad brakes on a mountain road. You held me while I cried. You promised to take care of me. My voice hardened. But it wasn't an accident, was it? My father discovered what you were doing. He found the wolfsbane derivative in my vitamin supplements. He was going to expose you. So you had them killed. That's a lie, Rowan wheezed. Your parents died in an accident. I had nothing to do with. The mechanic who tampered with their brakes is still alive, Darius said, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. He lives in my territory now, under my protection. He's prepared to testify that Alpha Rowan Steele paid him $10,000 to ensure Nathaniel and Claire Cross never made it down from Mount Redding. The hall erupted into chaos. Wolves shouting, crying out in shock and disbelief. The accusations were too serious, too explosive to ignore. Aldrich raised his hand, and silence fell, a testament to his power and authority. "These are grave accusations," he said. "Alpha Steele, Miss Cross, we will convene an official council investigation immediately, until this matter is resolved." "No investigation is necessary," a new voice said. Everyone turned. An elderly woman stepped forward from the Crimson Veil delegation, Elder Miriam, one of the pack's senior council members. She'd been part of Crimson Veil since before I was born. "Elder Miriam," Rowan said, his voice carrying a warning. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do," Miriam interrupted. She looked old and tired, like she'd been carrying a heavy burden for too long. "I've stayed silent for 24 years. I won't stay silent anymore." She turned to face the gathered crowd and the Alpha Council. "Everything Valentina Cross has said is true," Miriam declared. Rowan Steele ordered the deaths of Nathaniel and Claire Cross when they discovered he was poisoning their daughter. He administered wolfsbane derivative to suppress Valentina's wolf because he knew her bloodline made her a threat to his authority and his son's succession. "You're lying," Marcus hissed. "You're senile and I'm dying," Miriam said simply. "Cancer. The healers give me 2 months, which means I have nothing to lose by finally telling the truth." She looked at me, and her eyes were filled with regret. "I'm sorry, child. I should have spoken up sooner. Should have protected you. But I was a coward, and I let them destroy you. You're speaking up now," I said quietly. "That's what matters." Aldrich looked between Miriam, Rowan, Marcus, and me. Then he made a gesture, and 6 council enforcers appeared from the crowd. "Alpha Rowan Steele, Marcus Steele, you are both under council investigation for conspiracy to murder, unlawful poisoning, and abuse of Alpha authority," Aldrich declared. "You will surrender your pack authority immediately and submit to council custody pending trial." "You can't do this," Rowan shouted, but his voice broke into coughing. "I am Alpha of Crimson Veil. You have no right." "The council has every right when presented with evidence of crimes against pack law," Aldrich said coldly. "Enforcers, take them into custody." Marcus tried to run. It was stupid and desperate, and he made it maybe 10 feet before Lyra appeared in his path, her wolf's eyes glowing with predatory satisfaction. "Going somewhere?" she asked sweetly. He tried to shift, to fight, but Darius was suddenly there, his hand on Marcus's shoulder, radiating enough dominant alpha power to force submission. "Don't," Darius said quietly. "You've lost, Marcus. Accept it with whatever dignity you have left." I watched as council enforcers restrained both Marcus and his father. Watched as the 2 men who destroyed my childhood, murdered my parents, and tried to kill me were led away in chains. It should have felt satisfying, triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. "Miss Cross," Aldrich said, approaching me, "the council will need your full testimony. We'll be launching a complete investigation into Crimson Veil's leadership practices. Given Elder Miriam's confession and the evidence you've provided, I suspect we'll find extensive corruption." "What happens to the pack?" I asked. "The members who had nothing to do with this? They'll need new leadership," Aldrich said. "The council will appoint an interim alpha while we determine succession. Given the circumstances, we'll likely look outside Crimson Veil's current hierarchy." He studied me thoughtfully. "You have ancient bloodline markers. You've been grievously wronged by this pack. By law, you could claim alpha rights and challenge for leadership." The suggestion hung in the air. I could feel wolves watching me, waiting to see what I'd do. "No," I said finally. "I don't want to lead Crimson Veil. I don't want anything from this pack except acknowledgement of what was done to me and justice for my parents." I looked at Darius. "I have a pack. Shadow Pine Coalition. That's where I belong." Darius's expression flickered with something that might have been pride or relief. "Then the council will take your preferences into account," Aldrich said. You'll need to provide a formal statement, of course, and you'll be required to testify at the trial. I'll be there, I promised. As Aldrich walked away to begin organizing the investigation, Darius moved to my side. You did it, he said quietly. You brought down one of the most powerful packs in the territory. We did it, I corrected. I couldn't have done this without Shadowpine. Without you. Before Darius could respond, Natasha appeared, tears streaming down her face. Valentina, she sobbed. Please, you have to understand. I didn't know about the poisoning. I didn't know about your parents. Marcus told me you were wolfless, that you were weak, that you'd be better off if I was dead. I finished. Is that what you were going to say? Natasha's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We were friends, we were family, and I betrayed you. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know I never wanted you dead. I just wanted. You wanted what I had, I said. You wanted Marcus. You wanted to be Luna. You wanted status and power. And you were willing to step over my corpse to get it. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. Here's the thing, Natasha. I'm not the same person you betrayed. That girl who trusted you, who loved you like a sister. She died in Serpent's Lake. The woman standing here doesn't have space in her life for people who choose ambition over loyalty. I stepped back. But I'm not vindictive. I'm not going to seek revenge on you specifically. What happens to you now is between you and the council. Live with your choices. That's punishment enough. I walked away, leaving her sobbing behind me. The rest of the ceremony was a formality. With Rowan and Marcus in custody, Crimson Vale's succession was suspended. The council declared a state of emergency and began immediate oversight of pack operations. As we prepared to leave, dozens of wolves approached me. Some to apologize. Some to thank me for exposing the corruption. Some just stare at the girl who'd come back from the dead and destroy an alpha dynasty. One young woman, maybe 18, caught my arm as I passed. Thank you, she whispered. I've been trying to shift for 3 years. Everyone said I was defective, that I should just accept being wolfless. But maybe I'm not broken either. Maybe someone's been poisoning me too. My blood ran cold. What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah Winters. Come with me, I said immediately, pulling her toward Dr. Chin. We're going to test you. If someone's been doing to you what they did to me, we're going to stop it. As Dr. Chin began examining Sarah, and as I watched more young wolves who'd been labeled defective line up for testing, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't just about bringing down Marcus and Rowan. This was about exposing a systemic problem. About saving other wolves who'd been poisoned and suppressed and told they were worthless. This was about changing everything. Ready to go home? Darius asked as the last of the testing was completed. I looked around the grand hall, at the chaos we'd created, at the dynasty we'd toppled, at the wolves who might finally get the truth about their own conditions. Yes, I said. Let's go home. But as we walked out of Crimson Vale, I knew this was just the beginning. The pack system was rotten to its core, and I was going to burn it all down. Chapter 6, The Uprising. The investigation into Crimson Vale's corruption spread like wildfire through the Northern Territories. Within a week of the interrupted succession ceremony, the Alpha Council had uncovered evidence that made my case look like the tip of an iceberg. Financial records showed decades of embezzlement. Medical files revealed at least 17 other wolves who'd been systematically poisoned to suppress their shifts. Testimony from pack members painted a picture of an authoritarian regime that punished dissent and rewarded loyalty to the Steele family above all else. And it wasn't just Crimson Vale. As word spread about what had been done to me, wolves from other packs started coming forward with their own stories. Young wolves who'd been labeled defective. Families who'd lost members to accidents after questioning alpha authority. Omegas who'd been sold or traded like property. The system wasn't just broken. It was designed to be broken, built to concentrate power in the hands of a few while crushing anyone who threatened that power. I sat in Darius's office at Shadowpine Compound, reading through reports that made my blood boil. This is worse than I thought, I said, setting down the latest file. It's not just a few corrupt alphas. The entire hierarchy is built on oppression. Now you understand why I was exiled, Darius said from behind his desk. I saw this 50 years ago. I tried to change it from within, tried to reform Silvercrest into something better. The council couldn't allow that. Couldn't let other packs see that there was another way. So they destroyed you, I said. Made you an example. They tried. Darius's golden eyes gleamed. But I survived. I built something in the shadows. And now, thanks to you, the entire territory is watching.
Questioning.
Wondering if the system they've trusted is worth saving. A knock on the door interrupted us. Lyra entered, looking grimmer than usual.
We have a problem, she said.
The council just announced their decision on Shadowpine's pack status application. My stomach dropped. They denied it. Worse, Lyra said. They've declared Shadowpine Coalition a rogue organization operating illegally on unclaimed territory. We have 30 days to disperse or face council enforcement action. They're declaring war on us, I said, standing up. Because we exposed Crimson Veil. Because we're a threat to their authority. Because we're proving there's an alternative to their system, Darius corrected. He didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked like he'd been expecting this. Aldrich and the council can't allow Shadowpine to exist. We're too dangerous. We show wolves they don't need the pack hierarchy to survive. What do we do? I asked. Darius smiled, and it was the dangerous smile I'd learned to both fear and admire. We call their bluff. We refuse to disperse. We force them to either accept us as legitimate or openly attack wolves who've done nothing wrong except refuse to bow to their authority. That's insane, Lyra said. The council has thousands of warriors across a dozen packs. We have maybe 200 wolves total. If they come at us with full force. They won't, Darius interrupted, because half their packs are on the verge of rebellion right now. Wolves are questioning their alphas, demanding investigations into their own pack leadership. The council is holding on by a thread. If they attack us and it looks like an unjust persecution, that thread snaps. I understood his strategy. You're gambling that public opinion will protect us. I'm gambling that wolves are tired of being oppressed, Darius said. And that when forced to choose between the council and freedom, enough of them will choose freedom to make a difference. And if you're wrong, I pressed. Then we fight, he said simply. And we make sure that when they write the history of this moment, they remember we didn't go quietly. Over the next 2 weeks, tensions escalated across the northern territories. 3 more alphas were placed under council investigation for corruption. 2 packs experienced internal rebellions when lower-ranking wolves demanded leadership changes. The council responded by tightening restrictions and increasing enforcement presence. And through it all, wolves kept arriving at Shadowpine. They came in 1s and 2s at first. Rogues who'd heard about a place where they could find sanctuary. Wolves who'd been exiled for questioning authority. Omegas fleeing abusive pack situations. Then they started coming in larger groups. An entire family from Iron Peak Pack arrived after their alpha tried to force their teenage daughter into a mating contract with a much older beta. A dozen warriors from Stormcrest Pack defected when their alpha ordered them to arrest wolves who were protesting living conditions. Even some of Crimson Veil's members made the journey, unable to stomach remaining in a pack that had been built on such extensive corruption. Within 2 weeks, Shadowpine Coalition's numbers had swollen from 200 to nearly 500 wolves. We don't have many resources for this many, Kane said during an emergency council meeting. Our food stores are running low. We don't have enough housing. The medical supplies are stretched thin. Then we build more, I said. We hunt more. We ask for help from packs who support what we're doing. No pack is going to openly support us, Lyra pointed out. Not while the council has declared us rogue. It would mean risking their own status. What about covert support? I suggested. Supplies delivered quietly. Resources shared without official acknowledgement. There have to be alphas out there who agree with what we're doing, even if they can't say so publicly. Darius looked thoughtful. It's worth trying. Valentina, you've become something of a symbol these past few weeks. If you reached out personally to certain alphas, they might be willing to provide quiet assistance. Which alphas? I asked. He pulled out a map and marked several territories. Alpine Ridge Pack. Their alpha is young and progressive. Riverwood Pack. They've been pushing for reforms for years. And Coastal Haven Pack. Their Luna is one of the few females in a leadership position. She might sympathize with your story. I'll contact them, I said. What about the council? Any word on when they plan to enforce the dispersal order? The 30-day deadline is in 12 days, Darius said. My sources say they're assembling an enforcement team. 500 warriors from various packs, led by Council Enforcer Commander Drake Ironside. I knew that name. Drake Ironside was a legend, a massive alpha known for brutal efficiency in putting down rogue uprisings. If the council was sending him, they weren't planning to negotiate. Can we win against a force that size? I asked. In a straight fight? No, Darius admitted. But we're not planning a straight fight. We're planning to make enforcement so costly and so publicly visible that the council has to back down.
How? Kane asked.
Darius's smile was calculating. We invite witnesses, journalists, representatives from every pack in the territory. We make sure that when the council comes to enforce their dispersal order, the entire shifter world is watching. That's brilliant, Lyra said slowly. If we're attacked in front of witnesses, the council can't spin it as necessary enforcement. It'll look exactly like what it is. Oppression of wolves who've done nothing wrong. And if it works, I added, other packs will see that resistance is possible. That the council isn't invincible. And if it doesn't work, we'll be slaughtered on camera, Kane pointed out grimly. Then we better make sure it works, Darius said. I spend the next week reaching out to potential allies. Alpine Ridge's alpha, a young wolf named Kieran Frost, responded cautiously but positively. He couldn't openly support Shadowpine, but he could arrange for lost supply shipments to end up in our territory. Riverwood's alpha, Cashin Vale, was more direct. What you're doing is dangerous and probably suicidal, he told me during our communication. But it's also necessary. I'll send medical supplies and healers. If questioned, I'll claim they were stolen. But it was Coastal Haven's Luna, Isabella Wavecrest, who provided the most crucial support. I've been where you are, she told me during our video call. Her silver hair framed a face that was both beautiful and hard with experience. I fought my way to Luna position when the previous alpha died, without an heir. The council tried to block me, claiming a female couldn't lead effectively. I proved them wrong, but it cost me dearly. What are you willing to do to help? I asked. Everything is short of open war, Isabella said. I'll send resources. I'll provide sanctuary for your wounded if things go badly. And I'll make sure that when the council comes for you, there are cameras and witnesses present. The world needs to see what's really happening. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved. Thank me for surviving, Isabella replied. The pack system needs what you're building, Valentina. Don't let them destroy it before it has a chance to grow. As the deadline approached, Shadowpine transformed into an armed camp. We built defensive positions, organized evacuation routes for non-combatants, trained every able-bodied wolf in basic combat techniques. Darius and his experienced warriors drilled us relentlessly. You're not soldiers, Darius told the assembled coalition during one training session. Most of you have never been in real combat. But you have something professional warriors often lack. You're fighting for your right to exist. For your freedom. That makes you dangerous in ways the council won't expect. I trained alongside everyone else, though Darius had assigned me a specific role. You're our symbol, he explained during a private session. When the council arrives, you need to be visible. You need to speak for all of us. You're the wolf they tried to destroy who refused to die. That's powerful. No pressure, I said dryly. You can handle it, Darius said. Then, more quietly, you've handled everything else they've thrown at you. The night before the deadline, Darius called another council meeting. But this time, it wasn't just the leadership. He'd invited every wolf in the Shadowpine Coalition who wanted to attend. Hundreds of wolves packed into the main hall. Families, Warriors, rogues, exiles. All of them waiting to hear what would happen tomorrow. Darius stood before them, radiating the authority that made him the rogue king. Tomorrow, the council comes, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. They'll demand we disperse, that we abandon this place and submit to their authority. They'll threaten us with force if we refuse. He paused, letting that sink in. I won't lie to you. If we resist, people will likely die. The council has numbers and resources we can't match. This will be dangerous. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear was palpable. But Darius continued, his voice growing stronger. If we submit, we lose everything. Every wolf who came here seeking freedom will be sent back to the packs that failed them. Every reform we've started will be crushed. Every hope that things can be different will die. He looked around the hall, meeting eyes. So, I'm giving you all a choice. If you want to leave, do it tonight. No judgment, no shame. Take your families and go somewhere safe. I'll even provide resources to help you relocate. The hall was silent. But if you stay, Darius said, you stay knowing what's at stake. You stay knowing that tomorrow might be the day we prove the council wrong, or the day we all die trying. He waited. No one moved. Then, from the back of the hall, a young male wolf stood up. I recognized him as one of the recent arrivals from Crimson Vale. I'm staying, he said clearly. I spent 23 years in a pack that told me I was worthless, because I'm Omega. Here, for the first time in my life, people treat me like I matter. I'm not giving that up without a fight. An elderly female stood next. My granddaughter was poisoned like Valentina. She's finally shifting after being labeled defective for years. I'm not letting the council take that away from her. One by one, wolves stood, each declaring they would stay, each choosing resistance over surrender. I felt tears prick my eyes. These wolves were choosing possible death over returning to the oppression they'd escaped. When the last wolf had spoken, Darius nodded. Then we stand together. And tomorrow, we show the council that freedom is worth fighting for. The crowd erupted in howls, not of aggression, but of unity, of defiance, of hope. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood on the compound's wall, looking out at the forest that surrounded us, knowing that somewhere out there, 500 council warriors were preparing to march on our position. Nervous, Darius's voice came from behind me. Terrified, I admitted. What if this doesn't work? What if people die because I push for this? People die all the time in the current system, Darius said, coming to stand beside me. They just die slowly, quietly, crushed by oppression until there's nothing left. At least tomorrow, if we fall fighting for something that matters. That's not as comforting as you think it is, I said. He smiled slightly. Valentina, I need to tell you something. Before tomorrow, in case. Don't, I interrupted. Don't do the in case I don't survive speech. We're both going to survive. We're going to win this. And then you can tell me whatever you want to tell me. Darius looked at me, his golden eyes intense in the moonlight. Promise me something. If this goes wrong, if I fall and you have the chance to escape, take it. Don't die for me. Don't die for Shadowpine. Survive and carry on what we started. I'm not leaving you, I said firmly. Valentina. No, I cut him off. You saved my life when I was drowning. You gave me back my power. You showed me I wasn't broken. I'm not abandoning you now. He stared at me for a long moment, then pulled me into his arms. I leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his solid presence. When this is over, he said quietly, we need to talk about what you are to me, what you've become to me. When this is over, I agreed. We'll talk about a lot of things. The dawn came too quickly. We assembled in the clearing in front of Shadowpine compound, every wolf who could fight, and even some who couldn't but refused to hide. Behind us, non-combatants waited in the buildings, ready to evacuate if necessary. And in front of us, at the edge of the tree line, the council's enforcement team appeared. 500 warriors in formation, led by Drake Ironside himself. He was massive even in human form, easily 7 feet tall with muscles that looked carved from stone. His dark hair was shot through with silver, and his gray eyes were cold as winter. Behind the warriors, I spotted camera crews. Isabella had kept her promise. This confrontation would be broadcast to every pack in the territory. Drake stepped forward, his voice magically amplified. Shadow Pine Coalition, by order of the Alpha Council, you are operating illegally on unclaimed territory. You have been given 30 days to disperse. That period has expired. Surrender now and submit to council authority, or face enforcement action. Darius stepped forward to meet him, and I moved to his side. We discussed this moment extensively. Everything now depended on how we played it. We refuse, Darius said, his voice equally amplified. We have committed no crimes. We've harmed no one. We simply refuse to submit to a system that's corrupt to its core. You have no right to claim territory without council approval, Drake said. And the council has no right to dictate where free wolves can live, I countered. We're not attacking anyone. We're not threatening anyone. We're simply existing outside your authority. Since when is that a crime? Since always, Drake said coldly. The pack system exists for a reason. Order, structure, protection. Without it, we descend into chaos. The pack system exists to protect the powerful, I shot back. It exists to keep alphas in control and everyone else in line. We've seen the evidence, Commander. Systematic oppression, corruption, abuse. That's not order. That's tyranny. Murmurs rippled through both groups. The camera crews moved closer, capturing every word. Last chance, Drake said. Disperse now, or we will remove you by force. We refuse, Darius repeated. And we call on every wolf watching this broadcast to witness what happens next. The council is about to attack 500 wolves whose only crime is refusing to submit to oppression. Let history record this moment. Drake's expression hardened. So be it. Warriors advance. Stop. The voice came from behind the council's lines. A wolf pushed through the formation, not a warrior, but an older male wearing simple clothes. I am Thaddeus Greymane, former beta of Moonstone Pack, the male announced. And I'm here to testify that everything the Shadow Pine Coalition has said about the council's corruption is true. Another voice joined him. I'm Lydia Ashwood, former pack healer. I was exiled for refusing to perform forced sterilizations on Omega females. I can prove the council knew and approved these practices. More wolves began stepping forward. Witnesses, victims, wolves with evidence of council corruption who'd been too afraid to speak until now. The camera crews turned their equipment toward these new arrivals, and I saw panic flash across Drake's face. This is irrelevant, he tried to say. We're here to enforce. You're here to silence the truth, I interrupted loudly. Because if these wolves testify, if their evidence becomes public, the entire territory will see the council for what it really is, a corrupt oligarchy protecting its power at any cost. The moment hung in balance. Hundreds of warriors facing hundreds of wolves. Witnesses stepping forward. Cameras rolling. Drake's hand moved toward his weapon. And then, from within his own formation, a voice called out. I refuse this order. A warrior stepped out of formation, a female, maybe 30, with determination written across her face. My name is Sergeant Kira Stoneheart, Riverwood Pack. I was ordered to help enforce the dispersal of the Shadow Pine Coalition. But having heard the testimony, having seen the evidence, I cannot in good conscience attack wolves who've committed no crime. She walked across the open ground between the two groups and stood beside me. I stand with Shadowpine, she declared. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then another warrior stepped out of formation. Corporal Marcus Flame, Alpine Ridge Pack. I stand with Shadowpine. Another. Private Eliza Frost, Coastal Haven Pack. I stand with Shadowpine. One by one, warriors began defecting. Not all of them, maybe 50 out of 500, but enough. Enough to show that the council's authority was cracking. Drake looked at the defectors, at the cameras, at the growing crowd of witnesses, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. If he attacked now, it would be a massacre, and it would be broadcast to every pack in the territory. The council would be exposed as tyrants willing to slaughter innocents to maintain power. "Stand down," he said finally, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "All units, stand down." The council warriors lowered their weapons, though many looked confused and angry. Drake turned to Darius and me. "This isn't over. The council will respond to this defiance." "Let them respond," Darius said. "Let them try to explain to all those watching wolves why they're so afraid of a group that just wants to live free." Drake's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. He turned and ordered his forces to withdraw. As the council warriors filed back into the forest, as the defectors joined our ranks, as the witnesses began giving statements to the cameras, I felt something shift in the air. This wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was the beginning of something. The beginning of change. Chapter 7. The Alliance. The aftermath of the standoff changed everything. Within 24 hours, footage of the confrontation had spread across every pack territory in the northern regions. Wolves everywhere watched as Council Enforcer Commander Drake Ironside stood down rather than slaughter innocents on camera. They heard testimonies from victims of council corruption. They saw warriors defecting to join Shadowpine's cause. The narrative the council had carefully controlled for generations was unraveling. I stood in what had become our war room, a large space in the main compound building where maps, intelligence reports, and communications equipment covered every surface. Darius, Lyra, Kane, and our newest addition, Sergeant Kira Stoneheart, gathered around the central table. "Reports are coming in from across the territories," Kira said, pointing to marked locations on the map. 3 more packs have experienced internal uprisings. Wolves are demanding investigations into their leadership. 2 alphas have already stepped down rather than face scrutiny. "The council is losing control," Lyra observed. "But that makes them more dangerous, not less. Cornered predators are the most vicious." "Agreed," Darius said. "Which is why we need to move fast. We have momentum right now, but it won't last. The council will regroup, develop a new strategy, and come at us harder." "So, what's our play?" I asked. Darius pulled out a document, official-looking, covered in seals and signatures. "We formalize the alliance. Every pack that sent us support, every alpha who's sympathetic to our cause, every group of defectors, we bring them together under one banner." "A coalition of coalitions," Kane said thoughtfully. "Not a traditional pack structure, but a confederation of independent groups united by shared principles." "Exactly," Darius confirmed. "We're already doing it informally. Time to make it official and present the council with something they can't ignore, a legitimate political entity that represents thousands of wolves across multiple territories." "The council will never recognize it," Kira pointed out. "Acknowledging Shadowpine as legitimate undermines their entire authority structure." "They don't have to recognize us," I said, understanding Darius's strategy. "We just need enough packs to recognize us. Once we have that, the council becomes irrelevant." Darius smiled. "Now you're thinking like a revolutionary." Over the next week, I traveled to 3 different territories to meet with potential allies. Alpine Ridge was first. Alpha Kieran Frost received me in his pack house, a modern building of glass and steel that contrasted sharply with the traditional architecture most packs favored. "You've caused quite a stir, Miss Cross," Kieran said. He was young for an alpha, maybe 30, with auburn hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "My pack council is divided. Half think you're visionary. The other half think you're going to get us all killed." "What do you think?" I asked. Kieran considered the question. "I think the system is broken. I've thought so for years. But breaking something and building something better are 2 different skills. Can you build Valentina? Or can you only destroy?" "I'm learning," I admitted. "But I'm not alone. Shadowpine isn't just me. It's hundreds of wolves who found a better way to live. No rigid hierarchies. No absolute authority. Everyone has a voice in decisions that affect them." "Sounds like chaos," Kieran said. "It's messy," I agreed. "Democracy usually is. But it's also more stable in the long run because wolves choose to participate rather than being forced to submit. Kieran leaned back in his chair. If I join your alliance, the council will target Alpine Ridge. We'll face the same pressure you're facing. Yes, I said. But you'll also have allies. Other packs who've made the same choice. Strength in numbers. He studied me for a long moment. You're very different from the broken girl Marcus tried to drown. That girl died, I said simply. I'm what grew in her place. Kieran smiled slightly. I'll need to consult with my pack council. But provisionally, you can count Alpine Ridge as part of your alliance. We'll provide resources and political support. If it comes to war, he paused. We'll cross that bridge when we reach it. Thank you, I said. That's all I can ask. Riverwood Pack was more cautious. Alpha Cashinvale was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that held the wariness of someone who'd survived too many political battles. I support your goals, Cashin said bluntly. The council is corrupt. The pack system needs reform. But Valentina, you're asking packs to risk everything on what amounts to an experiment. How do I know your coalition won't descend into infighting the moment you face real pressure? You don't, I admitted. This is new territory for all of us. But I can tell you that Shadowpine has survived assassination attempts, council sanctions, and an enforcement action. We're still standing because wolves choose to stand together. For now, Cashin said, wait until resources get scarce. Wait until difficult decisions need to be made. That's when your idealistic coalition will fracture. Maybe, I said. Or maybe we'll prove that wolves can cooperate without a rigid authority structure forcing compliance. Either way, isn't it worth trying? Because the alternative is maintaining a system we all know is fundamentally unjust. Cashin was quiet for a long moment. My pack has been pushing for reforms for decades. The council has blocked every attempt. If your alliance succeeds, it could force changes that legislation never could. That's the hope, I said. Hope is a dangerous thing, Cashin replied. But it's also necessary. Riverwood will join your alliance. We'll provide medical support and supplies. And if the council moves against you again, we'll stand with you. Even if it means war? I pressed. Cashin's expression hardened. Especially if it means war. Because I'm tired of watching the council destroy good wolves to maintain their power. But it was Coastal Haven that provided the most surprising alliance. Luna Isabella Wavecrest greeted me at her territory's border herself, a show of respect that made a statement to anyone watching. Walk with me, she said, gesturing toward the beach that gave Coastal Haven its name. We walked in silence for a while, the sound of waves providing a peaceful backdrop that felt at odds with the tensions roiling through the territories. Do you know why I fought so hard to become Luna? Isabella asked eventually. Not Alpha. I could have challenged for that position. But Luna specifically? No, I admitted. Because I wanted to prove that females could lead without mimicking male dominance patterns, Isabella explained. The council told me I'd fail. That a female Luna without an alpha mate would be weak, ineffective, unable to command respect. They were wrong. She stopped walking and turned to face me. What you're building at Shadowpine is similar. You're proving that wolves can organize differently. That power doesn't have to flow from dominance and submission. The council fears that because it threatens everything they've built. Will you join the alliance? I asked. I already have, Isabella said. The moment I sent cameras to broadcast your standoff. I'm committed now, Valentina. And unlike some of your other allies who are hedging their bets, I'm all in. Why? I asked. You have everything to lose. A stable pack, respected position, resources. Because I remember what it was like to have nothing, Isabella interrupted. To be told I couldn't lead because of my gender. To fight every day to prove I deserve my position. And I'm tired of watching other wolves go through the same struggle. She placed a hand on my shoulder. You remind me of myself at your age. Angry, determined, willing to burn down the world to create something better. Don't lose that fire, Valentina. We're going to need it. By the time I returned to Shadowpine, we had formal commitments from 8 packs and provisional support from another dozen. It wasn't a majority of the Northern Territories, not even close. But it was enough to make the alliance real. "This is incredible," Lyra said, reviewing the agreements I'd secured. "We went from a rogue settlement to a legitimate political coalition in less than 2 months." "Don't celebrate yet," Darius warned. "The council is going to respond. The question is how." The answer came 3 days later. I was in the training yard, working through combat drills with a group of newer wolves, when Kira came running. "Emergency broadcast from the council," she said, breathless. "You need to see this." We gathered in the main hall where someone had set up a large screen. Hundreds of wolves crowded in to watch as the broadcast began. Council head Aldrich Thornhart appeared, looking grave and authoritative. "Wolves of the Northern Territories," he began. "For generations, the Alpha Council has maintained peace and order across our lands. We have protected wolves from external threats and internal chaos. We have upheld the laws that keep our people safe." "Here it comes," Darius muttered. "Recently, a group calling itself Shadowpine Coalition has been spreading false narratives about council corruption," Aldrich continued. "They have used manipulated evidence and coerced testimony to paint legitimate pack leadership as tyrannical. They have convinced well-meaning wolves to abandon their packs and join their unlawful settlement." "Manipulated evidence?" I said incredulously. "We have medical records, financial documents, multiple witnesses." "Sure," Kane said. "Let him finish." "The council has investigated these claims thoroughly," Aldrich said. "And while we have found some isolated incidents of individual wrongdoing, there is no systemic corruption. The accusations against the council and the pack system as a whole are unfounded and designed to undermine legitimate authority." He paused, his expression becoming harder. "More concerning is the growing militarization of Shadowpine Coalition and its allies. Intelligence reports indicate they are stockpiling weapons, training warriors, and preparing for armed conflict. This cannot be tolerated." "That's a lie," Lyra hissed. "We're training for self-defense, not aggression." "Therefore," Aldrich continued, "the Alpha Council is issuing an ultimatum to Shadowpine Coalition and all wolves who have pledged support. You have 72 hours to renounce your alliance and return to your legitimate packs. Those who comply will face no punishment. Those who refuse will be declared enemies of the pack system and hunted as rogues." The broadcast ended. The hall erupted in angry shouts and worried murmurs. Wolves turned to each other, demanding to know what we would do, whether we would submit or fight. Darius raised his hand, and silence fell. Everyone calmed down. "This is exactly what we expected. The council is trying to isolate us, make us look like the aggressors. We can't let them control the narrative." "How do we fight this?" I asked. "They're broadcasting to every pack. Their version of events will reach more wolves than ours." "Then we broadcast our own message," Darius said. "We tell our side of the story. Show the evidence. Let wolves decide for themselves who's telling the truth." "We need a platform," Kira said. "The council controls most of the official communication channels." "But not all of them," a new voice said. I turned to see a young male wolf I didn't recognize standing at the back of the hall. "Who are you?" Darius asked. "Oliver Quicksilver," the male said, moving forward. "I'm a tech specialist from Iron Peak Pack." "Well, former Iron Peak. I left after your standoff." He held up a laptop. "I can hack into the council's broadcast network. Give you access to the same channels they use. If you want to tell your story, I can make sure every wolf in the territories hears it." Darius and I exchanged glances. "Do it," Darius said. "We go live in 6 hours. Valentina, you'll be our spokesperson. Lyra, Kane, gather every piece of evidence we have. Medical records, financial documents, witness testimonies. We're putting it all out there." "That's dangerous," Kane warned. "Once we release everything, there's no going back. The council will have no choice but to crush us." "They're already planning to crush us," I pointed out. "At least this way, wolves will know why we're fighting." 6 hours later, I sat in front of a camera, surrounded by mountains of evidence, preparing to make the broadcast that would either save Shadowpine or doom us all. Darius stood behind the camera, his presence steady and reassuring. "Are you ready?" he asked. I thought about Marcus's hands around my throat, about 24 years of poison, about my parents murdered for trying to protect me, about every wolf who'd found sanctuary at Shadowpine after being failed by the system. "I'm ready," I said. Oliver counted down. 3, 2, 1, you're alive. I looked directly into the camera and began. "My name is Valentina Cross. 2 months ago, I was murdered by Marcus Steele, future alpha of Crimson Veil Pack. He strangled me, dragged me to Serpent's Lake, and held me underwater until he thought I was dead."
Why?
"Because I threatened his power." I paused, letting that sink in. For 24 years, I was told I was defective because I couldn't shift. I was poisoned with wolfsbane derivative from childhood to suppress my wolf. When my parents discovered what was being done to me, they were murdered in a staged accident. All of this was done by Alpha Rowan Steele with the knowledge and support of Crimson Veil's leadership. Behind me, documents appeared on screen, medical records showing the poison in my system, financial records showing payments to the mechanic who sabotaged my parents' car, testimony from Elder Miriam confirming the conspiracy. "The council tells you this is an isolated incident," I continued. "They're lying. We have evidence of systematic corruption across multiple packs. Wolves poisoned to suppress their shifts. Omegas sold into abusive matings. Dissenters exiled or executed. All of it sanctioned by the pack system the council claims to protect." More evidence flashed on screen, testimonies, documents, photographs. "Shadowpine Coalition exists because the system failed us," I said. "Every wolf here has a story of betrayal by the packs that were supposed to protect them. We're not criminals. We're not rogues. We're wolves who refuse to submit to a corrupt hierarchy." I leaned forward, speaking directly to the camera. "In 72 hours, the council will come for us. They will try to destroy Shadowpine and everyone who supports us. But we will not submit. We will not disperse. We will stand together and prove that there is another way." I gestured to the wolves gathered behind me, hundreds of them, all standing united. "This is not a rebellion. This is a revolution. We're not trying to destroy the pack system. We're trying to transform it into something worthy of the wolves it claims to serve. Join us. Stand with us. Help us build a future where every wolf has a voice, where power is shared rather than hoarded, where we protect each other instead of preying on the weak." I took a breath. "The council says we have 72 hours. We say we have 72 hours to show them that freedom is worth fighting for. Choose your side. Because after this, there is no neutral ground." The broadcast ended. For a moment, there was silence in the hall. Then someone started howling, a sound of defiance and determination. Others joined in until the entire compound echoed with the voices of wolves refusing to be silenced. "Well," Darius said, pulling me into his arms as the howls continued around us. "We've committed now. No turning back." "No turning back," I agreed. Over the next 72 hours, the response to our broadcast was overwhelming. Thousands of wolves across the territories watched it. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others were convinced by the evidence. And crucially, enough wolves were moved to action that the balance of power began to shift. 4 more packs openly declared support for the Shadowpine Coalition. Dozens of individual wolves made the journey to our territory, swelling our numbers to over 800. And most importantly, cracks appeared in the council's authority. 2 council members resigned in protest. Several alphas publicly questioned the council's narrative. The unified front the council had presented for generations was fracturing. But there was also a response we hadn't anticipated. On the 3rd day, as the 72-hour deadline approached, a massive convoy arrived at Shadowpine's borders. Not council enforcers. Not enemy forces. Allies. Luna Isabella led a force of 200 warriors from Coastal Haven. Alpha Kieran brought 150 from Alpine Ridge. Alpha Cashin arrived with medical teams and supplies from Riverwood. Even smaller packs we'd never directly contacted sent support. Warriors, healers, resources. By the time the deadline arrived, the Shadowpine Coalition commanded a force of nearly 1,500 wolves. And when Council Enforcer Commander Drake Ironside arrived with his enforcement team, he found not a frightened settlement waiting to be dispersed, but an army prepared to defend its right to exist. Drake surveyed the assembled forces, and I saw calculation in his eyes. He'd brought 1,000 warriors. We had more. And unlike our first confrontation, this time there would be no easy victory. "Stand down," Drake ordered. "This is your final warning. Disperse or face." "Or face what?" I interrupted, stepping forward. "Face warriors who've chosen to stand with us? Face allies who believe in what we're building? Commander, your threats ring hollow now. We are not alone. We are not weak. And we will not submit." Drake's jaw clenched. "You're starting a war you cannot win." "We're finishing a war the Council started generations ago," Darius corrected. "A war against wolves who dared to question authority. Against wolves who refused to accept oppression. That war ends today." The two forces faced each other across the clearing. Thousands of wolves, moments from violence. And then, impossibly, Drake lowered his weapon. "I can't do this," he said quietly. Then louder, addressing his warriors. "Stand down. All units, stand down." "Commander?" one of his lieutenants asked, confused. "I said stand down," Drake repeated. He looked at me, and there was something like respect in his eyes. "I've spent 30 years enforcing council orders, putting down rogues, maintaining order. But this..." He gestured to the assembled coalition. "This isn't a rogue uprising. This is a movement. And I won't slaughter innocents to protect a system I'm no longer sure deserves protecting." He turned to his warriors. "Any wolf who wants to join the Shadowpine Coalition has my permission to defect. I won't stop you. As for the rest of us, we're returning to Council headquarters to demand answers. Real answers about the corruption we've been protecting." With that, Drake Ironside, the Council's most feared enforcer, turned and walked away, taking most of his force with him, but leaving behind nearly 200 warriors who chose to defect. The standoff ended not with violence, but with the Council's authority crumbling before our eyes. "We won," Lyra breathed. "We actually won." "Not yet," Darius cautioned. "This is just the beginning. The Council won't give up power easily. But we've proven something important, that resistance is possible. That wolves will choose freedom when given the option." I looked at the thousands of wolves who'd gathered to stand with us. This wasn't just Shadowpine anymore. This was a true coalition spanning multiple packs and territories. This was the foundation of something new. "What do we call ourselves?" Kieran asked, joining our group.
We're more than Shadowpine now.
"We need a name that reflects what we've become." I thought about it. We were wolves who'd been rejected by the pack system. Wolves who'd found strength in unity rather than hierarchy. "The Free Pax Alliance," I suggested. "Because we're not bound by council authority. We're wolves who choose to stand together as equals." Darius smiled. "The Free Pax Alliance. I like it." As the sun set on that historic day, as wolves who'd been enemies hours before began sharing food and stories, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Marcus tried to kill me.
Hope.
Real, genuine hope that the world could be different, that we could build something better. The war with the council wasn't over. There would be more battles, more challenges, more wolves who would die fighting for freedom. But tonight we celebrated. Because tonight, we'd proven that change was possible. And sometimes, that's all the hope you need to keep fighting. Chapter 8. The Council's Gambit. The Free Pax Alliance changed the landscape of the Northern Territories overnight. Within a week of Commander Drake's defection, 6 more packs formally joined our coalition. Dozens of individual wolves continued arriving daily, seeking sanctuary from oppressive pack leadership or drawn by the promise of a system built on equality rather than dominance. We weren't a small rogue settlement anymore. We were a political force the council could no longer ignore. But with growth came new challenges. "We're running out of space," Kane reported during our daily council meeting. He looked exhausted, we all did. Managing 1,500 wolves across multiple territories required constant coordination. Shadow Pine Compound can house maybe 300 comfortably. We have 5 times that number. Alpine Ridge has offered a host overflow, Kieran said via video link. His image flickered on the screen Oliver had set up for remote meetings. We can accommodate another 200, maybe 300 if we convert some warehouses. Coastal Haven can take some as well, Isabella added from her own screen. But we need to think long-term. This ad hoc arrangement isn't sustainable. Darius leaned back in his chair, his golden eyes thoughtful. We need a central location. Neutral territory, where we can build a proper headquarters for the Alliance. Somewhere defensible but accessible. The Thornwood Valley, Lyra suggested, pointing to a location on our map. It's technically unclaimed land between 4 different pack territories. Good water source, defensible positions, and large enough to support significant development. The Council will claim we're seizing territory illegally, Kira warned. Let them, I said. They've been claiming everything we do is illegal. At this point, we might as well actually build something worth their disapproval. The decision was made. Within days, construction teams were heading to Thornwood Valley to begin building what would become Freedom's Landing, the first settlement specifically designed for the Free Pax Alliance. But while we were focused on growth and infrastructure, the Council was planning something else entirely. The attack came from a direction we didn't expect. I was reviewing supply requests in my office, a small room in Shadow Pine's main building that barely qualified as an office, when Oliver burst through the door. We have a problem, he said, his face pale. A big one. He pulled up his laptop, showing me a news broadcast from the human media. My blood ran cold as I read the headline. Terrorist cell operating in northern wilderness. Armed extremists threaten regional stability. What is this? I demanded. The Council's new strategy, Oliver said grimly. They've leaked information to human authorities. Fabricated evidence that the Free Pax Alliance is a domestic terrorist organization. Claims we're stockpiling weapons, planning attacks on civilian populations, radicalized extremists operating outside the law. But that's insane, I said. We're wolves. The human authorities don't even know we exist. We've maintained this secrecy for... They know now, Oliver interrupted. Or at least, they know something is out here. The Council gave them just enough information to be dangerous. Locations, numbers, warnings about armed militias. They're forcing us to either expose ourselves as shifters or face human military intervention. I felt sick. This was brilliant and terrible. The Council couldn't destroy us directly without looking like tyrants to the wolf community. But if they could get human authorities to do it for them, get Darius, I said. Get everyone. Emergency meeting. Now. Within an hour, our war room was packed with Alliance leadership. The mood was grim as Oliver explained the situation. Human military and law enforcement are mobilizing, he said, showing satellite images of troop movements. They think they're dealing with a militia compound. They're planning raids on multiple Alliance locations within 72 hours. We can't fight humans, Cashin said firmly via video link. That would expose our entire existence. The moment we shift in front of the human military, the secrecy that's protected wolves for millennia is gone. But if we don't fight, they'll arrest or kill everyone at those locations, Lyra countered. What are we supposed to do? Just surrender? We evacuate, Darius said. Every Alliance location mentioned in the intelligence leaks, we evacuate immediately. Scatter to territories the Council doesn't know about. That's exactly what they want, I protested. They're forcing us to abandon our positions, disrupting our organization, making us look weak. Better to look weak than expose our existence, Darius interrupted. Valentina, I understand your frustration, but this is a line we cannot cross. The moment humans learn about shifters, everything changes. Every pack, not just the Alliance, will be at risk. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. Start evacuations, I said heavily. Prioritize non-combatants and families. Move them to secondary locations the Council doesn't know about. And someone figures out how to deal with this media narrative before it spreads further. I might have something for that, Isabella said. I have contacts in human media, reporters who owe me favors. I can plant counterstories. Cast doubt on the terrorist narrative. Buy us some time. Do it, Darius said. Anything that slows the human response gives us more time to evacuate. The next 48 hours were chaos. We moved hundreds of wolves from exposed locations to hidden sanctuaries deeper in the wilderness. Families with children were prioritized. The sick and elderly received special transport. Warriors stayed behind to cover the evacuation and ensure no one was left behind. I worked alongside everyone else, helping pack supplies, coordinating logistics, comforting terrified pups who didn't understand why they were leaving their homes. Is it always like this? A young mother asked me as I helped load her family into a transport vehicle. Being part of the alliance? Running and hiding? No, I said, making my voice confident even though I felt anything but. This is temporary. The council is trying to break us, but they won't succeed. We'll find new locations, rebuild, and come back stronger. She nodded, not entirely convinced, but choosing to believe because the alternative was despair. As I watched the transport drive away, Darius appeared beside me. The last convoy is loading now, he said. We'll be clear of all compromised locations within the hour. And then what? I asked. The council will just do this again. Leak more information, force more evacuations, keep us constantly scrambling until we collapse from exhaustion. Probably, Darius agreed. Unless we change the game. I looked at him. What do you mean? Come with me, he said. There's something I need to show you. He led me to his private office, a space I'd only been in a handful of times. From a locked drawer, he pulled out a folder stuffed with documents. 50 years ago, when the council exiled me, I didn't just disappear into the wilderness, Darius said. I spent years investigating them, gathering evidence of corruption, abuse, crimes they'd committed and covered up. I was building a case, planning to expose them properly when I had enough proof. He handed me the folder. This is everything I collected. Financial records showing council members embezzling pack resources. Communications proving they orchestrated assassinations of reformist alphas. Evidence of systematic cover-ups spanning decades. I flipped through the documents, my eyes widening. Darius, this is enough to destroy the council completely. Why haven't you used it? Because releasing it would have exposed individual wolves to retaliation, Darius said. Sources who helped me gather information. Whistleblowers who would have been killed. I couldn't protect them all, so I held back. And now? I asked. Now we have the alliance, Darius said. We have numbers, resources, and allies. We can protect witnesses. We can ensure this information reaches every pack in the territories. And most importantly, we can provide sanctuary for anyone who faces retaliation for coming forward. I understood what he was suggesting. You want to go public with everything. Not just our evidence against Crimson Veil, but the entire history of council corruption. The council is trying to destroy us by manipulating humans, Darius said. We fight back by destroying their credibility with wolves. Once the packs see what the council really is, their authority evaporates. It's risky, I said. We'd be making ourselves the council's primary target. We're already their primary target, Darius pointed out. At least this way, we're fighting back. I thought about it. About everything the council had done, not just to me, but to thousands of wolves over decades. About the system they'd built and maintained through fear and violence. Let's do it, I said. Let's tear them down. We spent the next week preparing the ultimate exposé. Oliver worked with his network of tech-savvy rogues to compile everything into an accessible format, documents, audio recordings, video evidence, all of it organized and corroborated. Isabella used her media contacts to create a sophisticated propaganda campaign that would undermine the terrorist narrative while highlighting Alliance accomplishments. And I worked with former council insiders, wolves who defected to the Alliance, to verify and contextualize the evidence, ensuring everything was bulletproof. The plan was to release everything simultaneously across every communication channel we could access. pack networks, human media, social platforms. We'd flood the information space so thoroughly the council couldn't contain it. This is going to start a war, Kane warned during our final planning session. The moment we release this, the council will have no choice but to come after us with everything they have. They're already planning that, Lyra said. At least this way, we control the narrative. What about the human authorities?
Kieran asked.
They're still mobilizing based on the terrorist intelligence. Isabella's contacts have been planting counterstories, I explained, creating enough doubt that the human authorities are slowing their response. We have maybe a week before they move, which gives us time to execute the information release and deal with the fallout. Darius looked around the table at our assembled leadership. Does everyone understand what we're committing to? Once we do this, there's no going back. The council will view this as an act of war. Good, Isabella said firmly. I'm tired of half measures. Let's finish this. One by one, everyone nodded agreement. Then we go live tomorrow, Darius said. Prepare your packs. Secure your positions. And may the spirits help us all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood on Shadow Pine's walls, looking out at the forest that had become my home, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Nervous, Darius's voice came from behind me. Terrified, I admitted. We're about to try to topple an institution that's existed for centuries. What if it doesn't work? What if wolves don't believe the evidence? What if the council's authority is too entrenched to challenge? Darius moved to stand beside me. Then we'll have tried. That's more than most wolves can say. That's not very comforting, I said. He smiled slightly. I've never been very good at comfort, but I'm excellent at fighting lost causes. And this particular cause doesn't feel lost to me. It feels possible. Because of the alliance? I asked. Because of you, Darius said quietly. You were murdered and came back stronger. You've inspired thousands of wolves to believe change is possible. You've created something I spent 50 years trying to build and failed. So, yes, I think we have a chance. Because you refuse to accept that we don't. I looked at him, this dangerous, exiled wolf who'd saved my life and given me the tools to become dangerous myself. After tomorrow, I said, after we release everything and the council comes for us, what happens to us? To this, I gestured between us, acknowledging the connection that had been growing for months. That depends on whether we survive, Darius said. Then more seriously, Valentina, I need you to know something before tomorrow. In case things go wrong. Don't, I started. I love you, he said simply. I've loved you since you looked at me with those defiant eyes on the riverbank and refused to die. I've loved you through every training session, every strategic decision, every moment you've grown into the leader this alliance needs. And whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. My breath caught. In all the chaos and planning and fighting, I hadn't let myself acknowledge what I felt for Darius. The attraction, yes. The respect and admiration. But love. I love you too, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I think I have for a while. I was just too focused on revenge to recognize it. Darius pulled me into his arms, and I went willingly, drawing strength from his solid presence. After tomorrow, he said, when we've destroyed the council and rebuilt the pack system into something worthy of the wolves it serves, I want to be with you.
Properly.
Not as allies or partners in revolution, but as mates. Mates, I repeated. The word carried weight in wolf culture, a permanent bond, a commitment deeper than any human marriage. If you'll have me, Darius said. I know I'm not exactly primate material. Exiled, dangerous. Older than most wolves you've ever met. I kissed him, hard and certain, pouring everything I couldn't say into the contact. When we finally broke apart, I smiled. Ask me again after we win tomorrow. Because I want to say yes when I'm not worried it'll be the last conversation we ever have. Deal, Darius agreed. We stood together on the walls, watching the stars and preparing for the battle that would determine not just our fate, but the fate of every wolf in the Northern Territories. The information release went live at dawn. Across every pack territory, wolves woke to find their communication networks flooded with evidence of council corruption. Financial records, audio recordings, video testimony from dozens of witnesses. A comprehensive, undeniable catalog of crimes spanning 50 years. The response was immediate and explosive. Pack members began confronting their alphas, demanding explanations. Several alphas who were implicated in the evidence fled their territories. Others were forcibly removed by their own pack members. The council headquarters in Clearwater City was surrounded by protesters, hundreds of wolves demanding accountability. And in the human world, Isabella's media contacts ran stories about government corruption and illegal surveillance programs, effectively burying the terrorist narrative under a wave of counterinformation. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. Reports coming in from across the territories, Oliver said, monitoring multiple screens. 12 packs are demanding council resignations. 5 alphas have been overthrown by their own members. The council is in complete chaos. What about military response? I asked. Are the council enforcers mobilizing? They can't, Kira reported with satisfaction. Half the enforcement division has defected or refused orders. The remaining half is scattered across territories trying to maintain order in their own packs. The council has no military capability right now. We've won, Lyra said, disbelief in her voice. We've actually won. But even as celebrations began across Alliance territories, I felt uneasy. It was too easy. The council had held power for generations. They wouldn't collapse this quickly without a final desperate move. Something's wrong, I said to Darius. This feels off. He nodded. I feel it too. The council is too quiet. No official response, no counterattack, no. Oliver's screens all went dark simultaneously. What just happened? Lyra demanded. They're jamming our communications, Oliver said, frantically typing. Council must have activated some kind of kill switch. All Alliance networks are down. I can't reach any of our allied packs. That's impossible. Kieran's voice came over one of the few working channels. We have redundant systems, multiple networks. They've been planning this, Darius realized. The council has been quietly preparing for this exact scenario. They let us release the evidence, let it spread, and now they're isolating us before launching their real attack. As if summoning his words, alarms began blaring across Shadowpine compound. Contact, someone shouted. Multiple forces approaching from all directions. I ran to the walls and felt my blood turn to ice. The forest surrounding Shadowpine was filled with movement. Not hundreds of warriors, thousands. The council had assembled an army larger than anything we'd anticipated, and they were closing in fast. This was a trap, I breathed. They wanted us to release the evidence. Wanted us to celebrate and let our guard down. And now they're going to destroy every Alliance location simultaneously while our communications are down. Darius appeared beside me, his face grim as he surveyed the approaching forces. Sound the evacuation alarm, he ordered. Get non-combatants to the escape tunnels. All warriors to defensive positions. And someone get communications back online. We need to warn the other Alliance territories. Darius, I said quietly. We can't win this. There are too many. I know, he said. But we can buy time for evacuations. We can make them pay for every inch. And we can make sure the world sees what the council is willing to do to maintain power. He turned to face me, and I saw fear in his golden eyes. Not for himself, but for me. I need you to go, he said. Take a group, use the northern escape route. Get to safety and rebuild. No, I interrupted. I'm not leaving you. I'm not leaving anyone. We stand together, or we fall together. Valentina, that's an order from your co-leader of the Free Pax Alliance, I said firmly. Now, let's show the council what happens when they corner wolves who have nothing left to lose. Darius stared at me for a moment, then smiled. That dangerous, beautiful smile I'd come to love. Together, then, he said. Together, I agreed. The Battle of Shadowpine was about to begin. Chapter 9. The Last Stand. The council's army hit Shadowpine like a tidal wave. They came from all directions simultaneously, a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. Thousands of warriors in wolf form, moving with military precision, commanded by alphas who'd chosen the council's authority over the evidence of corruption we'd exposed. I stood on the compound's eastern wall, watching them come, and felt my wolf surge to the surface. She was ready, eager even. We'd spent months preparing for this moment, training for this fight. But preparation could only take you so far when you were outnumbered 5-1. First wave incoming. Kane shouted from his position. Everyone hold until my signal. The council warriors crashed against our outer defenses, hastily constructed barricades and trenches we'd prepared over the past weeks. Our fighters met them head-on, and the clearing in front of Shadowpine compound transformed into a nightmare of violence. I shifted, letting my wolf take control. She was smaller than most of the warriors we faced, but faster. Smarter. We'd learned to use size as an advantage rather than a weakness. I leaped from the wall into the fray below, my jaws finding the throat of a massive gray wolf who'd broken through our front line. He went down hard, and I was already moving to the next target before his body hit the ground. Around me, the battle raged. Lyra fought with brutal efficiency, her silver-gray wolf form a blur of motion and violence. Kane's dark brown wolf stood like a mountain, holding a critical defensive position against wave after wave of attackers. And everywhere, Alliance wolves fought with the desperation of those who knew this might be their last stand. Valentina, Darius's voice came through the pack link. The eastern wall is failing. I need you there. I broke away from the main fight and ran for the eastern section. Bodies, both Alliance and Council, littered the ground. The scent of blood was overwhelming. When I reached the eastern wall, I understood why Darius had called for me. The Council had brought something we hadn't anticipated: siege equipment. Massive battering rams were being wheeled forward, protected by shield formations of heavily armored warriors. We can't hold against that, I said, shifting back to human form. Someone tossed me a robe. Modesty wasn't a priority in battle, but it helped to have hands for tactical discussions. We don't have to hold, Darius said. His human form was covered in blood, some his, most not. We just have to delay long enough for the evacuation to complete. How many non-combatants are still in the compound? Last report said 50. Lyra answered, joining us. She had a deep gash across her shoulder that was healing slowly, too slowly, which meant the weapon had been silver-coated. Mostly children and elderly who couldn't move quickly. They're in the underground bunkers. Get them out, Darius ordered. Use the northern tunnel. I don't care if you have to carry them. Get them clear of this. What about you? I demanded. What about the rest of us? We hold as long as we can, Darius said simply. Then we fall back to secondary positions. If those fail, we scatter into the forest. Make them chase us in terrain we know better than they do. It was a good plan. A solid tactical retreat that would minimize casualties while making the council pay dearly for their victory. But something in Darius's tone told me he didn't expect many of us to make it to the scattering phase. The battering ram hit the eastern wall with a sound like thunder. The stone cracked. The wall held, but barely. We need to stop that ram, Kane said. If it breaches the wall, they'll flood the compound before evacuation's complete. I'll do it, I said. Valentina, no, Darius started. I'm the fastest we have, I interrupted. I can get through their lines, take out the ram operators, and be back before they know what happened. It's the only play that makes sense. Darius looked at me, and I saw the war in his golden eyes. The leader who knew I was right versus the mate who couldn't bear to lose me. Take Kira and Marcus, he said finally, referencing two of our best warriors. Go fast, hit hard, get out. I shifted back to wolf form and gathered my small strike team. We moved along the wall until we found a weak point in the council's formation, then burst through in a coordinated assault. The council warriors were so focused on the battering ram and the main assault that they didn't notice 3 wolves slipping behind their lines until it was too late. We hit the ram operators like a lightning strike. I took down the first one, a massive alpha who'd been directing the assault. His throat tore easily under my jaws. Kira and Marcus handled the others with brutal efficiency. But as we turned to retreat, I realized we'd walked into a trap. Council warriors surrounded us, cutting off our escape route. And standing at the front of the formation, looking coldly satisfied, was someone I recognized. Alpha Garrett, from Ironwood Pack. One of the alphas who'd initially offered Shadowpine support. He'd been a spy all along. "Well done, Miss Cross," Garrett said, his voice carrying over the sounds of battle. "The Council thanks you for making this so easy. They wanted you alive if possible. You've become quite the symbol, after all. Killing you publicly will send a powerful message about the cost of rebellion." I snarled, my wolf's rage burning through my control. We'd trusted him. We'd shared intelligence with him. Surprised? Garrett smiled. "You shouldn't be. The Council has had operatives in your alliance since the beginning. We knew every plan, every move, every defensive position. This battle was won before it started." "Darius," I sent through the pack link. "Garrett is Council. He's been feeding them information. This whole assault, they know everything." "I know." Darius's response came, heavy with resignation. "We figured it out about 10 minutes ago when their attack started targeting weak points they shouldn't have known about. Valentina, you need to escape. Don't try to fight your way back, just run." "I'm not leaving you." "You have to," Darius insisted. "If we both die here, the Alliance dies with us. Someone has to survive to rebuild. Please, Valentina."
Run.
I looked at Garrett and his warriors, calculating odds. We could fight. We'd die, but we'd take some of them with us. Or I could run. Save myself. Leave everyone I cared about to die. My wolf growled at both options. Then I felt it. A shift in the air, a change in pressure that made every wolf present turn toward the forest. And from the trees emerged an army. Not Council warriors. Alliance reinforcements. Luna Isabella led them, her silver wolf form magnificent and terrible. Behind her came hundreds of warriors from Coastal Haven, Alpine Ridge, Riverwood, and a dozen other packs we'd allied with. Packs the Council thought they'd isolated by jamming our communications. But Isabella was smarter than that. She'd prepared for communication failures. She'd positioned scouts and set up contingency plans that didn't rely on technology. And now she'd brought an army to save us. The Council forces, suddenly facing enemies on two fronts, faltered. Their coordinated assault dissolved into chaos as they tried to defend against attacks from multiple directions.
Now.
Isabella's voice boomed through every pack link within range. "Free Pax Alliance. Push them back. Show these Council dogs what happens when they corner wolves who fight for freedom." The tide of battle turned. Our warriors, reinvigorated by the arrival of reinforcements, pushed forward with renewed fury. The Council lines broke. Warriors who'd been attacking moments ago were now retreating, trying to regroup. I took advantage of the chaos to break through Garrett's encirclement. Kira and Marcus followed, and we fought our way back towards Shadowpine's walls. Garrett tried to stop me personally, shifting into his brown wolf form and lunging for my throat. But I was faster. I dodged under his attack and raked my claws across his exposed belly, leaving deep wounds that wouldn't heal quickly. "You should have stayed loyal," I growled at him through the pack link. "The Council is finished, and you chose the losing side." I left him bleeding in the dirt and ran for the compound. The battle raged for another hour. It was brutal, chaotic, and deadly. Alliance wolves fought with the fury of the desperate while Council warriors realized they were no longer facing an easy victory. Finally, as the sun began to set, a horn sounded from the Council lines. A retreat signal. The Council forces withdrew in relatively good order, carrying their wounded and dead. They'd lost, not decisively, but enough that continuing the assault would cost more than they were willing to pay. As silence fell over the battlefield, I shifted back to human form and surveyed the damage. Shadowpine compound was heavily damaged. The eastern wall had partially collapsed. Buildings were burning. The ground was littered with bodies, too many bodies. But we'd held on. Against impossible odds, we'd survived. Casualties? Darius asked, appearing beside me. He was limping, and I could see burns across his back where fire-based attacks had caught him. Still counting, Kane reported, his face grim. But preliminary numbers say we lost about 60 warriors. Another 100 wounded, 20 critically.
60 dead.
60 wolves who'd believed in the Alliance, who'd fought for freedom, who'd trusted us to protect them. And the evacuations? I asked, my voice hollow. Complete, Lyra said. All non-combatants made it to safety. No casualties among civilians. Small mercy. At least the children had survived. Luna Isabello approached, her silver hair disheveled but her presence still commanding. We need to talk about strategy. The council will regroup and come back, probably with even more forces. We can't defend Shadowpine against another assault like that. Then we don't defend Shadowpine, Darius said. He looked at the damaged compound, something like grief crossing his face. This place has been my home for 50 years. But it's just a location. The Alliance isn't a place. It's an idea. And ideas can't be destroyed by burning buildings. What are you suggesting? Kieran asked, joining the group. We evacuated Shadowpine entirely, Darius said. Disperse across all Alliance territories. Make ourselves harder to target, harder to isolate. The Council's strategy relies on destroying central leadership and infrastructure. If we have no central location, they can't use that strategy. That's a massive logistical challenge, Cashin pointed out via a communication device Oliver had managed to get working again. Coordinating a dispersed alliance across multiple territories is exactly what we're built for, I interrupted. We're not a traditional pack with a rigid hierarchy. We're a coalition of equals. We can function without centralized command because every territory has leadership that can make decisions independently. I looked at the assembled leaders. The Council's biggest mistake was thinking we operate like they do. They assumed destroying our headquarters would destroy the Alliance. But we don't need headquarters. We need wolves willing to stand together. And those wolves are everywhere now. Isabella smiled.
She's right.
We've already proven the concept works. Look at what happened today. I brought reinforcements because I made independent decisions based on the situation, not because I waited for orders from Central Command. So we embrace decentralization, Kieran said thoughtfully. Make it official. Every Alliance territory operates independently but coordinates through regular councils and shared communication networks. Exactly, Darius said. And we keep pressure on the Council. Keep releasing evidence. Keep supporting wolves who want to leave oppressive packs. Keep building the alternative until the old system collapses under its own weight. That could take years, Kane said. Then it takes years, I replied. We're not going away. We're not surrendering. And eventually, the Council will run out of resources, credibility, and wolves willing to die defending their corruption. Over the next 3 days, we evacuated the Shadowpine compound. It was heartbreaking work. Wolves who'd called this place home for months or even years packed their meager belongings and said goodbye to the settlement that had represented freedom and safety. I helped where I could, loading supplies, comforting crying children, assisting the wounded onto transport vehicles. On the final night, only a skeleton crew remained, Darius, Lyra, Kane, Kira, and myself. We stood in the empty main hall where so many councils had been held, so many decisions made, so many celebrations shared. Strange to see it empty, Lyra said quietly. It's not empty, Darius replied. The wolves are gone, but their spirit remains. Everything we built here, everything we learned, everything we became, that doesn't disappear just because we're leaving the physical location. He pulled out a small explosive device, enough to destroy the compound completely, so the council couldn't use it as a propaganda victory. Everyone ready? He asked. We nodded. We walked out together, and Darius triggered the device. Explosions bloomed behind us as Shadowpine Compound, the birthplace of the Free Pax Alliance, was destroyed. But I didn't feel defeated as I watched it burn. I felt free. What now? Kira asked as we drove away from the burning compound. Now we rebuild, I said. Not in one location, but everywhere. The Alliance isn't a place anymore. It's a movement. And you can't destroy a movement by burning buildings or killing leaders. You can if you kill enough leaders, Kane pointed out darkly. Then we make sure that doesn't happen, Darius said. We adapt. We evolve. We become what the council can't fight, an idea whose time has come. We drove through the night, heading toward Freedom's Landing in Thornwood Valley, the new central point for alliance coordination, though we all understood it would never be what Shadowpine had been. As dawn broke, I looked at Darius in the driver's seat. He was exhausted, wounded, grieving the loss of his home. But he was still here, still fighting, still believing that change was possible. You asked me something, I said quietly. A few nights ago, before the battle. Darius glanced at me, understanding dawning in his golden eyes. I did. Ask me again, I said. He smiled, that beautiful, dangerous smile I'd come to love. Valentina Cross, will you be my mate? Will you stand beside me not as an ally or a co-leader, but as my partner in everything? For as long as we both survive this insane revolution we've started. Yes, I said without hesitation. To all of it, yes. In the back seat, Lyra hooped. Kane smiled. Kira applauded. And as we drove toward an uncertain future, as the sun rose on the ruins of what we'd built and the promise of what we'd build next, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time.
Peace.
We'd lost the battle for Shadowpine, but we'd won something more important. We'd proven that the Alliance couldn't be destroyed. That wolves who'd tasted freedom would never accept oppression again. That change, once started, was impossible to stop. The council thought they'd won by forcing us to abandon our headquarters. They had no idea they'd just created something far more dangerous. A movement with no center to attack. No infrastructure to destroy. Just thousands of wolves across dozens of territories, all committed to the same vision of a better world. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I truly believed we could win it. Chapter 10. The New Order. 3 months after the fall of Shadowpine, the Northern Territories were unrecognizable. The Alpha Council's authority had collapsed in all but name. 8 of the 12 council members had resigned or been forcibly removed by their own packs. The remaining 4 clung to power in isolated territories, their influence shrinking daily as more wolves defected to the Free Pax Alliance. Across the territories, the old hierarchies were crumbling. Packs that had operated under authoritarian alphas for generations were experimenting with council-based governance. Omegas who'd been treated as property were claiming rights and autonomy. Young wolves who'd been labeled defective were getting tested for poisoning and finally shifting for the first time. The revolution we'd started wasn't just political anymore. It was cultural. A fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be a pack, a community, a wolf. I stood in the assembly hall at Freedom's Landing, watching as representatives from 43 different packs and alliance territories gathered for what we were calling the Unity Summit. It was the first time so many diverse groups had come together with the explicit goal of writing a new charter, a set of principles that would govern how packs interacted and how individual wolves were protected. Nervous? Darius asked, appearing at my side. In the 3 months since we'd formalized our mate bond, I'd grown accustomed to his presence as a constant in my life. Through our bond, I could feel his own anxiety about today's proceedings. Terrified, I admitted. What if we can't agree on anything? What if this whole summit falls apart into arguing and infighting? Then we'll keep trying until we get it right, Darius said. That's the difference between us and the council. We're willing to struggle through the messy process of building consensus rather than imposing order through dominance. Luna Isabella called the summit to order, her commanding presence silencing the murmured conversations. Wolves of the Northern Territories, she began, we gather here today not as separate packs or competing factions, but as equals united by a common goal, creating a system that protects all wolves, not just the powerful. She gestured to the documents laid out on tables around the hall. Over the past 3 months, working groups from every alliance territory have drafted proposals for a new governing structure. Today, we debate these proposals, refine them, and hopefully reach consensus on a charter that every pack can agree to. And if we can't reach consensus, someone called from the crowd, I recognized him as Alpha Thaddeus from Stonecrest Pack, one of the more traditional territories that had only recently joined the Alliance. Then we keep working, I said, standing up. All eyes turned to me. The old system was built on the idea that someone always had to be in charge, that decisions had to be made quickly and enforced absolutely. We're proposing something different, a system where every voice matters and decisions are made through discussion and agreement. That's idealistic nonsense, Thaddeus said bluntly. What happens in an emergency? What happens when there's a threat and we need immediate action? We can't call a summit every time there's danger. That's why the Charter includes provisions for emergency protocols, Cashin explained, rising from his seat. Individual alphas retain authority to make rapid decisions for their own packs during crises. But those decisions are subject to review, and patterns of abuse can trigger Alliance intervention. Who decides what constitutes abuse? Another alpha asked. Who has authority to intervene in pack business?
We all do, Kieran said.
That's the point. The Alliance isn't a hierarchy with someone at the top making decisions for everyone. It's a confederation where every pack has an equal voice, and disputes are resolved through mediation and agreed-upon processes. The debate went on for hours. Passionate, sometimes heated, always intense. These were wolves who'd been raised in hierarchical systems trying to reimagine something completely different. But slowly, painfully, consensus began to emerge. The charter that took shape over the next 3 days contained several revolutionary provisions. First, the abolition of absolute alpha authority. Every pack would have some form of council or advisory body that the alpha had to consult on major decisions. Alphas who consistently ignored their councils could be challenged and removed. Second, universal rights for all wolves regardless of rank. Omegas couldn't be sold or traded. Wolves had the right to refuse matings. Physical punishment required due process. These rights applied across all Alliance territories. Third, the establishment of the Alliance Council, not a governing body with authority over individual packs, but a coordinating organization that facilitated communication, mediated disputes, and could impose sanctions on packs that violated the Charter's basic principles. Fourth, and perhaps most revolutionary, the right of wolves to leave their birth pack without being labeled rogues. If a pack violated the Charter or failed to provide adequate protection, wolves could seek sanctuary in other Alliance territories without losing their status. It wasn't perfect. There were compromises and ambiguities that would need to be worked out over time. But it was a framework, something better than the system we'd torn down. On the final day of the summit, as all 43 pack representatives prepared to sign the Charter, Darius pulled me aside. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "Something I've been holding back." My stomach tightened. Through our bond, I could feel his nervousness. "What is it?" "The Alliance Council needs a leader," Darius said. "Someone to coordinate between packs, someone with the political skills to keep this fragile coalition together. The representatives have been discussing it, and they've agreed on someone." "Who?" I asked. "You," Darius said simply. I stared at him. "What? No. I'm not qualified to." "You're the only one who makes sense," Darius interrupted. "You're not an alpha, so other alphas don't see you as a threat to their authority. You're a symbol of what the Alliance stands for, a wolf who was oppressed by the old system and rose to challenge it. And you have something none of the rest of us have." "What?" "The ability to see beyond pack boundaries," Darius said. "You think in terms of all wolves, not just your own people. That's what the Alliance Council leader needs to be." "What about you?" I asked. "You've been leading this movement for 50 years. And I'll keep leading Shadowpine's scattered territories," Darius assured me. "But Valentina, I'm too associated with revolution and violence. The Alliance needs someone who represents hope and transformation, not destruction and revenge. That's you." I wanted to refuse. I wanted to say I wasn't ready for this kind of responsibility. But when I looked out at the assembly hall, at the 43 packs who'd come together to create something new, I knew Darius was right. "I'll do it," I said. "But only if you're beside me. Co-leaders like we've always been." Darius smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The charter was signed that evening in a ceremony that felt more like a celebration than a political formality. 43 alphas and pack leaders put their names to a document that fundamentally changed the Northern Territories. As each one signed, wolves in the assembly hall howled, not in aggression or dominance, but in unity and hope. When it was my turn to sign as the first Alliance Council Coordinator, I felt the weight of history on my shoulders. This was the moment everything changed. The moment we officially ended the old system and began building something new. I signed my name clearly, Valentina Cross. Not Valentina Cross Nightborn, though Darius and I were mated. I kept my father's name, honoring the parents who died trying to protect me from the system we'd just dismantled. As the ceremony concluded and wolves began celebrating, Marcus Steele appeared at the edge of the hall. I hadn't seen him since the succession ceremony where I'd exposed his and his father's crimes. He looked terrible, gaunt, aged beyond his years, his eyes haunted. "Valentina," he said quietly, "can we talk?" Darius tensed beside me, but I placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay." I walked with Marcus to a quiet corner of the hall, away from the celebrations. "I'm not here to ask forgiveness," Marcus said immediately. "I know there's nothing I could say that would make what I did okay. I tried to murder you. I poisoned you for years. His voice broke. I destroyed everything good in my life because I was a coward who cared more about power than people." "Then why are you here?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Because I wanted you to know that you were right," Marcus said. "About everything. The system was corrupt. The hierarchies were oppressive. And I was too blind and too selfish to see it until you tore it all down in front of me." He pulled out a document, official-looking, stamped with legal seals. "This is my formal renunciation of any claim to Crimson Veil leadership. I'm signing over all authority to a transitional council that will oversee the Pack's integration into the Alliance system." "Where will you go?" I asked. "South," Marcus said. "To the Reconstruction Territories. There's a program there for wolves who've committed crimes under the old system but want to make amends. Hard labor, community service, actual rehabilitation instead of just punishment." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I can't undo what I did to you, to your parents, to everyone I hurt, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to be better than the monster I was." I studied him, this wolf who'd once been my whole world, who'd murdered me and tried to erase my existence. Part of me wanted to spit in his face, to tell him no amount of community service would ever make up for what he'd done. But a larger part of me recognized something important. Marcus was changing. Not because he was forced to, but because he'd seen what the old system had made him become and hated it. "I hope you find peace," I said finally. "I hope the work you do in the South gives meaning to the life you almost threw away. But Marcus, don't ever contact me again. Don't try to rebuild some kind of friendship or connection. What we had died in Serpent's Lake. What remains is just two wolves who once knew each other and now don't." Marcus nodded, accepting the boundary I'd drawn. "Thank you for seeing me. And Valentina?
I really am sorry.
For whatever that's worth." "It's worth something," I admitted. "Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. But acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all we can give each other." He left, disappearing into the crowd, and I watched him go with mixed feelings. Closure, maybe. Or just the final severing of a connection that had defined too much of my life. "You okay?" Darius asked, returning to my side. "I will be," I said. That was the last piece of my old life. The last ghost I needed to put to rest. "Good," Darius said. "Because your new life is about to get very complicated." He wasn't wrong. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of activity as we implemented the new charter across the Northern Territories. 15 more packs joined the Alliance, bringing our total to 58. The remaining holdouts were isolated, their authority challenged by their own members who demanded the reforms and protections the Alliance offered. We established the Alliance Council headquarters at Freedom's Landing, creating a permanent structure for coordination and dispute resolution. But true to our decentralized principles, most decisions were still made at the pack level, with the council serving as facilitator rather than ruler. Dr. Chen's research into wolfsbane derivative poisoning uncovered a horrifying truth. Over 300 wolves across the territories had been systematically poisoned to suppress their shifts. We launched a massive testing and treatment program, and one by one, these wolves experienced their first shifts, reclaiming the power that had been stolen from them. Isabella established the first Omega Advocacy Network, creating safe houses and legal support for wolves escaping abusive pack situations. Kieran pioneered new economic models that allowed packs to trade and cooperate without the exploitative hierarchies that had characterized the old system. And Cashin worked with the few remaining council members who'd been willing to acknowledge their institution's failures, helping them understand that reform wasn't weakness, it was survival. Through it all, Darius and I led together, not as Alpha and Luna, but as equal partners in building something unprecedented. But the work wasn't without cost. There were packs that resisted the changes, alphas who tried to maintain absolute authority and faced rebellions from their own members. Some of these transitions were peaceful. Others were violent. We lost wolves. Good wolves who believed in the alliance and died fighting for reforms in territories that weren't ready for change. And personally, the constant travel, negotiation, and crisis management took its toll. There were nights when I collapsed into bed too exhausted to even speak to Darius, though our bond let us communicate comfort and support without words. But there were also moments of pure joy. The day we witnessed the 1,000th wolf shift for the first time after being treated for poisoning. The night we attended the first same-sex mating ceremony to be recognized across multiple territories, something that would have been unthinkable under the old system. The morning we woke to news that the last Alpha Council member had resigned, officially ending the institution that had ruled the Northern Territories for centuries. And on a crisp autumn day, exactly 1 year after I'd been pulled from Serpent's Lake, Darius and I stood in a clearing overlooking Freedom's Landing with a small group of our closest friends and allies. "Are you ready for this?" Darius asked, his golden eyes warm with love and amusement. I looked down at the small swell of my stomach, barely visible yet, but undeniable. Our pup, conceived during one of the rare peaceful moments between crises. Terrified, I admitted. I have no idea how to be a parent, especially while coordinating an alliance of 60 packs and trying to prevent civil wars. "Then it's a good thing you're not doing it alone," Darius said. He placed his hand over mine on my stomach. "We're going to figure this out together, just like we've figured out everything else." Together, I agreed. Luna Isabella stepped forward, having volunteered to officiate our formal mating ceremony, the public one, since we'd already bonded privately months ago. "Wolves of the Free Packs Alliance," she began, her voice carrying across the clearing to the assembled witnesses. "We gather today to recognize the formal mating of Darius Nightborn and Valentina Cross, two wolves who represent everything our alliance stands for. Strength through adversity. Hope through darkness. Love is powerful enough to change the world." She turned to us. "Darius Nightborn, do you pledge yourself to Valentina Cross as mate and partner, equal in all things, bound by choice rather than obligation?" "I do," Darius said clearly. "Valentina Cross, do you pledge yourself to Darius Nightborn as mate and partner, equal in all things, bound by choice rather than obligation?" "I do," I said. "Then by the power vested in me by absolutely no one because we don't believe in hierarchical authority anymore," Isabella said with a smile, "I declare you formally and publicly mated. May your bond strengthen the alliance, as the alliance has strengthened you." Our friends held their approval. Lyra, Kane, Kira, Kieran, Cashin, and dozens of others who'd fought beside us to build this new world. As the celebration began, I pulled Darius aside to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. "Do you think we did it?" I asked. "Do you think we actually changed things for the better?" Darius looked out at Freedom's Landing, at the wolves of different packs mingling freely, at the council buildings where disputes were resolved through discussion rather than dominance, at the medical centers where poisoned wolves were finally healing. "I think we started something that can't be stopped," he said. "The alliance isn't perfect, We still have problems, conflicts, and wolves who resist change. But we've proven that there's another way. That wolves can govern themselves without authoritarianism. That power can be shared rather than hoarded.
He turned to me.
A year ago, you were a broken girl drowning in a lake. Today, you're the coordinator of an alliance that's transformed the Northern Territories. If that's not proof that change is possible, I don't know what is. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have, Darius said. But you didn't have to. That's what makes us strong. Not that we can survive alone, but that we choose to stand together. As the sun set over Freedom's Landing, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. Marcus's hands around my throat, the freezing water of Serpent's Lake, Darius's golden eyes looking down at me on the riverbank, the poison being purged from my system, my first shift, the battles, the betrayals, the moments of despair when I thought we'd never win, and the victories, the slow, hard-won victories that had accumulated into a revolution. I was no longer the girl who drowned. That girl was gone, mourned, and buried. I was Valentina Cross, Alliance Council Coordinator, mate to Darius Nightborn, soon-to-be mother, a wolf who'd been murdered and risen stronger. And I was home, not in a place, but in a purpose, in a community, in a vision of what the world could be. The Northern Territories weren't perfect. We still had problems to solve, injustices to address, wolves who needed protection and healing. But we'd torn down a system built on oppression and started building something better in its place. And that was enough. That was everything. Come on, Darius said, taking my hand. Our friends are waiting. Let's go celebrate the world we've created. Together, we walked back to the celebration, to the wolves who'd fought beside us, to the future we were building, to the life we'd chosen. The girl who drowned had become a woman who changed the world. And she was just getting started.
The end.
Valentina went from a broken girl drowning in a lake to the leader who transformed an entire society. She found love, built an alliance, and proved that wolves don't need dominance hierarchies to be strong. They need freedom, equality, and the courage to stand together. This is the end of Valentina's story, but it's also the beginning of a new era for the Northern Territories. If Valentina's journey moved you, if her transformation from victim to revolutionary inspired you, drop a comment and tell me what moment hit you hardest. Was it her first shift? The moment she confronted Marcus? The choice to stand with Darius against impossible odds? Or maybe it was watching her learn that real strength isn't about power over others. It's about choosing to fight for what's right even when the cost is high. Thank you for listening to this story from Wolf Heart Tales. Remember, you're never as broken as they tell you you are, and the person who rises from the ashes of your old life might be stronger than you ever imagined. Until next time, stay wild, stay strong, and never let anyone convince you that you're less than extraordinary.